word to the wise. We are an explicit podcast tackling content, adult themes, as well as entering spoiler territory if you aren't caught up with us. That is through part 1 of Best Served Cold.
Hey there, this is Cross.
I'm PJ.
And we are Words and Whiskey, a podcast for veteran and novice readers alike. We tackle fiction novels and love to talk about what we're drinking. PJ, people should be thinking of us as their intoxicating weekly book club.
They should. I think they do. You do, right? Right in.
I hope so at this point.
Tell us if you do.
Yeah. We have one, this is so funny as far as like a tangent goes. We've a follower of whom is also a garbage man. He's got a great Instagram page. I believe it's the Fit Garbage Man. And he listens to us in the morning when he's working out or on the truck. So I know that he's not drinking when he's doing either working out or on the truck. So
you know, don't know that. You assume that.
Fair enough, I guess. But yeah.
And
yeah,
running can be intoxicating. Working out can be intoxicating. Yeah. It doesn't have to be
workout high.
It doesn't have to be a true like intoxicant.
Yeah, I was gonna say I feel like intoxicating is specific versus, you know, inebriated is cross-functional, isn't it? Or is it the other way around?
You're the words dude.
It's one or the other. Like, well, yeah, fair fucking point. Inebriated is drunk. Intoxicated is drunk or under the influence of drugs. So I knew it was one or the other. Like one is definitely drunk and one is not. I thought it was the other way, but intoxicated, I mean, makes sense. It's, you know,
we're not your inebriating weekly book club. Very true.
Okay. PJ, I am so excited. I like physically have a hard time containing myself to talk today. Today is going to be our first episode, I think, of 11 or 12, where we're covering Best Served Cold, which is my favorite book that I've read in my adult life. I went into this on The Thief of Always. I don't want to set the expectation too high, but for me, it's also a lot to like cover it in a concise and meaning. Like I had a hard time. We false started this episode like 3 weeks in a row for us record, like when we were going to do it.
Yeah.
Because I was like, oh, I got to read it again. Yeah. So
yep.
I'm novice.
I'm very excited to get into it. I'm already loving it, so I think you have nothing to be afraid of as far as whether or not I'll like your favorite book. I think we're good.
It's also it's not exactly just that like you won't like it. Like that's one of the fears. That's probably the highest fear. Let's be real, because it would be miserable to do the show for a quarter and not enjoy what we're doing. I did it for long enough for a stretch, but to also do justice to how good this book is. That's like my other big palpable fear, is to do it a disservice in some way. So I hope to bring life, and I hope that we get to bring life and color commentary to all the great tone and characters, everything that we're gonna experience here in Best Served Cold.
We got this.
I'm sure. Yeah. I don't think we're gonna fuck it up. I'll put it that way. To starting a new book, I say cheers.
Cheers.
As I have the unofficial sponsor of the podcast, Rakia.
I have some Plantation 3-star rum.
All right. Woohoo. Okay, so today is our first episode talking about Best Served Cold. And just maybe for people at home, I'm going to give a little bit of an explanation to the nature of the breakdown very quickly in the way that we're going to talk about this on the podcast. It's a little bit different than the way that we traditionally cover parts and whatnot, because I'm just sometimes going to say part 2, and we're going to cover the entirety of part 2, or the entirety of part 4, but every week will be within either the beginning of a part or the end of a part. At most, I've split parts in 2, outside of the final part, which is 3. So that one will go back to kind of a chapter by chapter. I'll always give you the ending chapter that we'll read through in the same sort of way, but I might also just say Part 2 Westport, which is what we're reading next week. So this week, we're reading Part 1, which includes the prologue, Benna Mercado Saves a Life. So very excited to talk about this. But PJ, let's get a quick overview in, a little summary of our delinquent soldiers.
You've given me the directive of not doing character by character summaries, and I think that kind of makes sense so far.
At the very least to start, yeah. We'll feel it out, but for now.
So, what I've got here are brand new, never-before-seen perspective characters prove that there aren't just a small handful of broken, complicated human characters in this universe. Monza narrowly avoids the same fate that befalls her brother, Benna, at the hand of Duke Orso, creating a thirst for an all-too-familiar need, vengeance. After being nursed to health by a strange physician, she assembles a team in the form of Call Shivers, who we find begging for work and getting into fights on the street, and Friendly, the trusted lackey of one of her old friends. They find, torture, and kill one of the 7 people she has her sights on, but the whole experience doesn't quite give her the satisfaction she craves.
That's a good summary. That's good ass work. Good work. Oh, man.
I think that covers... I mean, there's... We'll get into the nitty-gritty, obviously, but
we'll get into the details.
That's a good...
Yeah. That's like a Dragon Ball Z recap. Last week, we fought Cell, and Goku was powering up for his Kamehameha. You know, it's very much...
For the third week in a row.
For the third week in a row. He's still doing it. Folks, he's still doing it. Yeah, I'm very excited to talk about the story. High level, real quick, I know that you said that you were already enjoying it, but just for the folks at home, what are your sort of initial thoughts, your initial reaction to this story, to part 1, to kind of where we stand? So far,
I am having a lot of fun, but also actively trying not to make direct comparisons. No, sorry. Okay. I said...
Trying not to have fun?
No, yeah. I'm having fun with this thing, but I'm also trying not to do this thing. And this thing is making direct comparisons to other perspective characters from the previous trilogy, if that makes sense. So...
Yeah, that's fair. I mean...
Yeah, it's hard not to draw the comparisons between Monza and Glocta with the physicality, and then Monza and Pharaoh with the vengeance, and then Shivers and Logan for a couple different reasons. And Friendly is a little different, but feels weirdly similar to Frost when it comes to like the narration.
Yeah, so that's fair.
Yeah, I'm enjoying doing that, but I also want to let these characters breathe and live for themselves. So I'm actively like trying to suppress that part of my brain.
That's fair. I think comparisons are good. I mean, in this circumstance, I don't think that it does it a disservice. We're talking about the same man's work, you know, as a body of work. I think it's why we're here, you know, to talk about the world and to enjoy that and enjoy it in all of its context and glory. So I wouldn't dissuade you from it, but I also appreciate that you are circling and trying to ensure that you're also registering and liking them for who... Liking isn't the right word, but understanding who they are themselves as well. So...
Yeah, enjoying, I think, is a better word than liking. Yeah. But, you know, they're...
Well, yeah, right.
They're close enough to synonyms that both can work anyway. I do want an updated version of that really, really cool art of Glocta on the Endless Staircase.
Ooh.
With Monza on there, too, after she was complaining about one more fucking stair.
Yeah.
I don't know if we talked about that on the show. That was such a cool piece of art. I don't know if it's a new piece or if you just posted it because we got there. That the Endless Staircase with Glocta click tap painting up and...
Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah, that was a good one. Click tap pain. I think that was Beers the Mind Killer, of whom drew that little piece and did it with the stairs. So that was a new piece in that case. Okay. But there's a lot of art that I have saved, actually, that now I should go back and post now that you mentioned that, because I did... Not that you would ever check our saved posts, so I think I'm fair, or I'm fine in that regard. You won't look there, but I saved a bunch of like art that I really liked from the original trilogy. So maybe do some resharing on a lot of that work. But yeah, okay, cool, man. Well, let's get into it here, because these are some beefy chapters. I think this is the second longest week that we're gonna have. It's kind of it kicks it off with a bang. I mean, in terms of
whole lot of bangs.
A whole lot of bangs, a whole lot of beefy boys in a lot of ways. So we'll kick it off here with the first chapter. Benna Mercato saves a life. As with any book, we love to take a moment to talk about the opening line here, or opening thoughts. And this one is particularly poignant and pungent, and it hits you right in the senses in a lot of ways. So, the sunrise was the color of bad blood. It leaked out of the east and stained the dark sky red, marked the scraps of cloud with stolen gold, which is such a strong fucking start. That's a mood setter right away.
Just not even hiding the blood imagery of all of it, and clear foreshadowing to what's to come. And we get quite a bit of it even in this first section of just a ruthless story with hopefully maybe a little heisty elements to it. We get some whatever gold she collects feels stolen potentially, but I don't know. But anyway, yeah, we talked about this last week, I think, with Mike, how like all of these books start super, super strong. And this is absolutely no exception.
Yeah. Yeah, we did. In particular, I mean, like, this line's great. The line that follows it is great, that like the colors that they see are black, red, and gold, the colors of their profession, which is just so like, you don't know who these people are, but then you get into the head of Benna and Monza and this whole thing.
Yeah, you get a pretty clear understanding of not what exactly they do from this, but who they are as people.
Yeah. We start our story proper, introduced to these two characters, siblings, in the form of Benna and Monza Mercato, or Monscaro, as she's called a couple of times. And I'll kind of use that interchangeably as I think it makes sense.
She's got a lot of names. But Benna...
What's up?
She's got a lot of names.
Yeah, the Snake of Talins. You know, there's a couple of different things thrown around. The Butcher of Capril, right? There's another nickname that gets brought up a lot. But there are a handful that are ascribed to her, and none to Benna, as we kind of find out why over the course of like the chapter, I think, to some degree, and we can talk about that more. But from where they're going and their perspective, they're on their way up the mountain to the citadel of Fontesamo, Duke Orso's stronghold in Talins on the island country of Styria. We're here. I'm so excited. Benna wants a better life, one where they're both able to retire and explore the world. Monza counters, saying that one more year to break the remaining members of the League of Eight to put a crown on Orso's head is all that they need, and then they can set out and do whatever they like.
So, Crossland, know what has never gone wrong in the history of storytelling?
What?
One last big job.
True. But and you're so right. But this like also isn't one last big job. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't the same sort of like get the guys together and let's do it.
But
this
it is just still like
the final campaign. Yeah,
it's still a commission-based enterprise that they're entering into, and they could just hang it up right here. But she has one more goal in her mind. One last big...
On behalf of Orso, thing. Like on behalf of someone else, which is a big deal.
On behalf of somebody else, but also for the payoff of that big accomplishment.
Right. Yeah. In addition, as far as like that note goes, I do also... This comes a little bit later when we're introduced to Ganmark. There's so much good and interesting commentary around Ganmark. But one of the things that I think comes up in his perspective is like... I think it's something along the lines of like, people are bad at hanging up swords and not picking them up again. Is one of the many great sayings that comes out of sort of the banter that's had with Ganmark right away off the bat. And so accurate. I mean, that is in my mind, that is a perfect reflection on a lot of the themes of the original trilogy right at the beginning of this book, just to like call it out and kind of put it in front of you, which I think this book does right away as well.
To ask, when you first read this, did you get the immediate impression that we were inhabiting Benna's point of view? For like the first few pages? Because I definitely had that feeling. I think it's because of the name of the chapter, and there's nothing
so agnostic. Yeah.
There's nothing like pointing to it being Monza for the first few pages, at least. I think, at least on Kindle. I know it was a few pages, which is probably like a page, maybe in print. I still haven't gotten the print copy yet. I need to do that.
So I listened to the first part of this novel originally. So I didn't listen to the whole thing. I kind of went back and forth the first time that I read it. I'm getting sniffly all of a sudden, which is kind of weird. I must have got a little something in my sinuses.
It's the spicy banana that you ate before recording.
The spiced banana. We're not talking about the spiced banana. It was gnocchi. I just had Calabrian chili peppers in it.
It looks like banana.
But when I first read it, I listened to the first part, and then I think I read parts 2 and 3, and then I listened to 4, and then I read 5, and then 6 and 7, I think I did an audiobook. Or no, 6 I did an audiobook. 7 I just raced through. I couldn't put it the fuck down. Like, I needed to just go. I've since reread it as well, like physically reread it and re-listened to it. So, first time combo, I don't think that I got that hint. Second time, though, I see exactly what you're saying. Or not second time. This time, though, I see exactly what you're saying, specifically because the first inclination that we're in Monza's perspective is the hidden smile when he finally hits on a good compliment. Right, yeah. Because she knows that she's smiling, but he is unaware because it's tucked away on the other side. He wouldn't be able to see that. So that's like our first hint from a neutral POV, and almost.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's only a few paragraphs in, but I remember being surprised that it was Monza's point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think the biggest thing is the name of the chapter.
Yeah, sure.
Being Benna threw me off. But inconsequential. I love how it all turned out. Well, I don't love how it turned out in entirety.
I love how it's written. Yeah,
I love how it's written. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Did you? I obviously this also does a lot of like building for the siblings as they are. What were your initial reflections on Monza and Benna?
Also, didn't think that they were siblings. I thought they were like married.
There is a little bit of that. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. I don't think I understood that they were siblings until maybe Orso mentions her brother, or maybe she does herself later on. But it was like halfway through the section where I'm like, oh shit, they're siblings. Yeah, there's like gifts and there's compliments and like there's things that feel like they could be taken romantically or in a courting way.
Yeah, and fair enough.
Like knows? The stone. Who am I to judge? Maybe they are.
Yeah. It is interesting, like the stone, I think, ring that he gives her and whatnot, and like the compliments. I do think it's a good amount of like misleading detail in pieces where Joe is clearly like, yes, here is this husband and wife, and then it's like, no, you fool, you fell for it. They're brothers and sisters. I got you right away. You're so gullible.
Yeah, I remember also being thrown off by Monza's names.
Monscaro, the Butcher of Capril, Snake of Talins.
Between her first and last, Monscaro, specifically Monscaro and
Mercato, their last name. Yeah.
And like, I remember wires getting crossed on that too.
Yeah, in all honesty, I don't know when I put it together that Monscaro was like a longer version of her first name versus Monza being like the short version. I think it took me longer than this first section to get it together.
Especially because they say Monza was her mother's name. Or her grandmother's name. Her father's mother's name. Which you'd think when you're talking about like the name of the person that you're named after, you'd go with the full version of it. But yeah. It's all fuzzy. I don't know.
It's pretty good though. I like it. I dig it. Like it is fuzzy, but I think in a fun way that like he really introduces you very neutrally to these characters, which is a kind of a fun thing for a writer of whom is generally so driven by POV and by like perspective. This is the most neutral introduction that I think we get to a character in all of the POVs.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, and it's a prologue too, which makes it also feel unique because prologues.
It also feels indicative of the culture that we're suddenly immersed into, with very flowery names and words and everything.
Yeah. And language. Oh my God. There's another little section that happens right away here that I really like, where Joe is describing the whole Fortezamo, right? And he's going through and he's like, there's fountains and there's all this beautiful shrubbery that's like pointlessly trimmed but incredible, and like there's all of these different things, and it's spoiled by the guards standing in the doorway like tyrants or something like that. It's just like what a perfect description of like beauty, immaculate, all of these cool things. And then the reality of what this is kind of sets in, you know?
Right. Yeah, all of that, but also just the art and the craftsmanship that goes into everything. I'm not super learned when it comes to like assessing different historical time periods,
like the frescoes, the statues,
and things as far as like what this is evocative of, but this feels very Italian in my brain. But that might be because Italy's the only country in Europe that I've been to. So it very well could be Spanish too, but I don't know. It seems Italian.
I'm gonna nudge you. He's going for Italian.
Yeah,
this whole thing is Italy, which is another reason that I was kind of excited that this like it lines up because you actually have had an Italian experience.
Yeah.
You know, on that side of things. But yeah, all the frescoes, all the art, all the like domes, there's like the crazy depiction and even like the moment of reflection and conversation about the 8 years that it took the artist to paint the sort of like thing on the ceiling with the 7 fates and the wizards and all of this shit that like Monza doesn't care about immediately. She's like, it's cool, it's intimidating, but
so the other thing about that specifically, the fact that it's still the same mythology and it's still the same like wizards being depicted as in the Union caught me by surprise. It makes sense. We know they're actual like people, and there are people that we've interacted with that have met and experienced these
that
people.
Are in that painting. Yeah,
like,
right. Yeah,
but I still expected a different set of like heroes, I guess, to be overseeing all this. But I guess this just extends the reach of Baez, and that gets revealed later on when fucking Malthus is here too.
Yeah, Malthus shows up right away, right?
But I mean, we already knew that Baez had his fingers in Orso's pie, so to speak.
Yeah, right. We kind of got that impression at the very end, and we kind of had that understanding. But to what depth, and to have Malthus reappear is so interesting. I do want to bring up, I find there's so many subtle notes and nods, I would say, throughout this section to sort of the way that the story is going to go, that upon reflection is so good that I have a hard time not just talking about them. So I'm going to talk about them a little bit because like it happens at the end of the chapter. It doesn't matter.
Yep.
You know, it's foreshadowing what's happening in the same chapter. So I feel okay with it. The 7 fates on the ceiling, you know, being like the ones that are doling out the reality upon the world as that literally happens to Monza and Bena is great, but it's like going back and killing fate is sort of like this whole premise of this story. So he wraps this up so well in its own theming and tone that I feel like I am absolutely kissing boots every time I open my mouth and talk about this, but I think especially this first chapter is just masterclass shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I appreciate the significance of another number now. So
good number 7. Yep.
Number 7. I'm interested in how that relates to the number 11 from the previous.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. If there's
7-11.
any crossover there, if that comes up again.
Gas stations, man. That's all this is. That's all it's going to be. It's all it's ever going to be. We're getting Slurpees in the next book.
11 shows up
the
on
heroes
Dice too.
Yeah. the Heroes is all about a run to the gas station.
What hero doesn't have to run to the gas station now and again?
Very true. Very true. Yeah. Come on.
Get one of those hot and ready breakfast burritos that taste
hot
like shit.
And breakfast burritos. Again, this is a very long chapter. It's 22 pages. There's so many details. So the next part, we'll kind of just freeform it.
It's a chapter, but it's also kind of another part, being the prologue.
Yeah. It entirely is. It's, you know, it's a third of our reading this week, technically, I think, or somewhere close to that. So giving it its due in a lot of ways. But
it's like 45 minutes in audiobook.
49, yeah. And there are 2 other 40-minute chapters in this section, which is just like, oh.
But then there's some that are like a couple
6
minutes.
Yeah. Friendly's POV is 8 minutes. It's like, oh, okay.
Should have been longer.
Yeah, true. Yeah, we'll get there. But we're then introduced to our sort of 7 members of a rogues galley of sorts here. And I'll kind of roll through them, and then we can talk about them one by one. So first up, Count Fosker, of whom is the son of Orso, that is maybe the kindest, the most like unbecoming of the behavior that happens here. He even kind of turns away from it and runs away when it occurs. What are your thoughts on, what do you think about Fosker?
Don't trust anybody named Count.
Can't trust a Count. Yeah.
Dracula, end of list. That's all you need on the list. Like, counts are fucked.
Count Dracula, really bad. Don't fuck with counts. Yeah.
But yeah,
good point.
He seems like an actual. So I feel like getting into this all feels very mafia.
Sure.
And
mafia, perhaps?
What other mafia is there?
Yeah, fair point. The mafia does refer specifically to the Italian mafia.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is clearly being Orso's son. Like, this is a guy born into the mafia that's he's not mafia material.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see when he gets cold. I don't know.
Cool. he is the guy of whom we'll see when he gets cold. He's the guy of whom feels like he doesn't fit in with the rest, in my opinion.
Totally.
Like the casual bystander, though. That doesn't mean that he's not guilty by being a bystander, you know, in the rest of it, or like among the vengeful ghost here that we're kind of dealing with. But yeah.
Yeah, but at a certain point, being a bystander is the only way to not like speaking up will get you killed.
Oppose it. I don't think he can kill his son in this situation, you know? Because he kind of like wimpily went like, "No, Dad, don't." Like I won't be a party to this, I think is what he says,
yeah,
and then storms out. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gutless
he doesn't,
a little bit.
Yep. Definitely gutless.
Seems to have his head in the right spot, if not his actual actions.
Right. Anything else on Fosker?
No.
Foska, as Pacey says it, which again, I listened to this like 3 times and read it like 3 times in preparation for this week. So yeah. Cool. Next up then is General Ganmark, of whom we talked a little bit about already. Personally, my favorite of the conversations of the various ones that kind of we bounce around between. This is my favorite until we get to Duke Orso, because I think it has the most depth as these military members kind of meet each other and talk proper. Fosker is kind of weak in chats with Benna, you know, and they seem to be the weaker personalities, and gravitating towards Ganmark is interesting because Ganmark outright disrespects Benna, which is interesting.
We also get a lot more background on Ganmark than we do almost anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like.
Yeah. Man removed from his post for his sexual discretion, you know, with an officer.
Yeah. And further, like, understanding of what he's doing now, or what he would, if he were to be demoted to like a janitor, he would do it impeccably, something like that.
Truly, that is one of my favorite lines in this whole thing. In my experience, swords do not hang comfortably from hooks. They have a habit of finding their way back into one's hands. And then Benna replies, "I dare say Orso will keep you on, even if it's only to polish the tiles." And Ganmark barely exhales. He says, "Did not give so much as a sharp breath," before replying, "Then His Excellency will have the cleanest floors in all of Styria." Mm-hmm. And if that doesn't say like a made man, you know, for Orso, what does?
Yeah, totally. In
his pocket.
I just want to know his like, every time that there's a mention of a Union accent or a connection to the
Union, physician later.
Yeah, exactly.
The bone thief.
Those are the two. Those are the only two. But I want to know their connections to. Well, this is being a military man. I want to know his connection to Glocta and to West and to potentially to Giselle, but probably not, because fuckboy didn't do anything. Timeline probably
doesn't line up.
But just to see if they ran in the same circles at all.
Great questions. There's so much that's fun, I think, in Ganmark's character. I think that it asks a lot more questions than it answers, but it also answers some, I think, which is good. Mm-hmm. Right away, we know where he stands. He seems, in my opinion, he's the most well-defined immediately, you know. Yeah.
Seems
if that makes sense. Yeah.
Putting a lot of focus on the fact that he didn't have to pause to answer. And that could be seen as yeah, that's just exactly how he feels, or that could be seen as focusing on too much on making us think that that's exactly how he feels. I don't know. Conspiracy brain.
Great question. This is a conspiracy, which is perfect for a conspiracy brain. So it works out that way.
Yep.
We then get to Faithless Carpi, which what a fucking name for a guy. You know? A member of the 1,000 Swords, more likely the 10,000 Swords, given the total number of the mercenary crew, of which we know is Monza and Bennis.
Yeah. So surprised to see them involved in this, because they seem to be like straight up subordinates to Monza.
I will say that they did remark earlier here that they were just scoundrels that would do anything for money. So
That's
in my
fair.
opinion,
That's a good
it feels
point.
like Faithful is probably bought out, you know,
Faithless
from a seven deadly sin
Faithless
perspective
is
as
maybe
well.
maybe a good descriptor of the person.
Mm-hmm. I did write Faithless, but it is Faithful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are these all men? I can't remember.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. 100%. All men. Yep.
Yeah. That was the one that I wasn't positive on.
Yeah. Man.
Okay.
As well. Captain Faithless Carpi seems
Faithful.
to be likely faithful. Shit. I wrote the joke and then I'm now repeating bad information. But yes. We then have Malthus, of course, of whom is our banker of Valiant and Bulk from before they are hanged, and Last Argument of Kings, which implies some bias, like you said earlier. It's nice.
What's interesting is that Malthus is a part of the seven.
And also, wait, explain.
Malthus is one of the seven people that Monza has her sights on.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to just being a party, a witness to what happened.
I think being a witness incriminates, which is what she's suggesting.
That's
with her targets.
That's fair.
I will say there's other really good subtext here, because Orso asks Malthus to stay for what's about to happen, which means that Malthus knew what was about to happen, because he looks at Monza and then reacts. And that says a lot about what Malthus was in on.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder how much, like, what Baez is in on. Or what Malthus does outside of his banking duties.
Yeah. It begs many questions.
It does.
But he heads for Westport, of course. You know.
Of course. Where we're going next, right?
As is mentioned. I think so. Yeah.
Yep.
Pretty sure part 2 is Westport.
I'm sure of it. I know it because I was looking for that word to stop reading.
Yeah. At the very least, what's great about this, what I really like about this book and the way that we're breaking it up as well, is your worst case of turnover that you would get is you would immediately hear Westport, a quote, and then you would go into a Monza flashback, which is, you know, like not going to ruin anything or like taint
if I
sort of
accidentally
opinion.
overread.
Yeah. I'm not saying you should do that, but even if you did like roll over a chapter, you know, you'd be fine.
Okay.
So Malthus, Gaba, of whom I think there's the least to say about immediately, but we'll say more about by the end of this week.
Is the one who had the piano wire at Monza's throat, and Monza just happened to get her hand up quickly enough to not fucking die right away. Right. Yeah. To live long enough with the wire at her throat. If you're gonna, but he doesn't. If you're gonna kill somebody with a piano wire, why not? Why the piano wire? Why did you choose a piano wire? Why not just go with a knife? It feels that's so what they did. Weird. Yeah, that's because fair. Benna got stabbed, right? Stabbed 3 times. Yeah, a bunch of times. Like he's riddled with holes. Makes it pincushion makes a great pillow for a fall, though. It does. That's true. As long as there's not pins in it, still. Good point. Cushion makes a good landing for a fall. He was a pincushion for a moment. Yeah. Yeah, just lucky that way. Maybe a little. These fucking mafia guys gotta be artistic with their killing, and it's just not effective, man.
Yeah. Gaba sucks though. There's nothing on him.
Gaba,
yeah. He's a henchman. He's the henchmaniest of henchmen.
He's like bodyguard, right?
Yeah, the bodyguard.
Yeah.
Right
but
hand.
still, like, seemingly incredibly wealthy later on.
Yeah. Oh, and very important.
Very important man about town. Wearing whores with cowbells or some shit. I don't know.
Such a weird guy. Weird proclivities, and then he begs.
The thing, is I don't know if it's real or if it's just like how Friendly sees things. Like, I don't know if I can trust Friendly's perception of things.
But he's so good with those dice, and he's so clear and concise and well described.
Yeah, but
yeah.
I don't know if that prostitute had a cowbell. Like, I don't know what that was.
Might have just been a couple of bells. Yeah.
It might have been like something that clinked together on her dress or something. I don't know.
Could just be loud to him, you know?
Yeah. Or jewelry, whatever. In a deep moment of irony, I appreciate that he begs for the life of his wife and kids. Like, he's like, I have a family, as though he's not sleeping with fucking whores. Like, he doesn't. What a piece of shit. Anyway, we'll get there when we get there, but I didn't take that note down, so I just want to mention it now before we get there. Yeah, Gaba sucks. Prince Orso, they all suck. They all tried to kill our prospective character, Crossland.
They all suck. They did. They thought they killed her, actually.
They did. They killed one of them. They killed her brother.
Yeah. 50% success rate. Yeah. Coin flip. Yep. Killed the wrong one. We then have Prince Orso, of whom is the last of the entourage of Orso, of whom is the eldest son of Orso, and is just a fucking prick. He is, in my opinion, I think he's worse than Therese.
Is he? He's just calling himself Prince, right? Like, this motherfucker's a count.
He is a count, for sure. He is definitely calling himself Prince with the assumption that he's going to be Prince the moment that Duke Orso is crowned.
And you know how I feel about counts.
They all suck, including Count Dracula.
Well, he literally sucks.
Fuck. I fell into that one. I fell straight into that one.
It is his defining characteristic.
Definitional. Yeah. Orso sucks.
Yep. I don't.
Not a whole lot else than he's like a prick.
There's not a whole lot else to him. He just he's not a pleasant person. But I don't remember a whole lot of specifics about him.
He's just like sitting in the chair, so like laissez-faire, you know.
He's very sloth-like.
He's very petulant for an eldest child as well. He's like, you know, he's not only sloth-like, but he's like, oh, why? You know, he's got like
he's entitled.
Yes. Yeah, he's like Giselle gone truly awful, like truly bad at the core.
Yeah. If Giselle,
he'd be like Giselle's son in a way, you know, like maybe.
Well, if Giselle's son was actually a
prince,
we'll see.
We'll see. Yeah,
we'll see ideas. We'll see what happens.
I definitely wasn't setting you up there.
No, I know.
No, I was. That was the bit. I was setting you up there. But yeah. So anyway, and then finally, the final member of sort of the entourage, or 6 and 1, is Duke Orso himself. We get a lot more time with Duke Orso over the course of this. He's full of a lot of speeches. You know, he says like, "What did Bioloveld say? History is written by the victors," and he's got this nice.
That was Monza.
Monza, sorry, in the conversation that they have kind of back and forth.
Monza's the one that's constantly referencing like poets and philosophers. I'm assuming poets and philosophers, but scholars, whatever they are.
Yeah. You're right, because she mentions Staulicus a couple of times. She mentions Bioloveld once, and then one other. It starts with a V. I have the quote written later on. Yeah.
But Duke Orso is seemingly very forthright and very, what's the word I'm looking for? He seems to at least understand and reward merit. Clearly, that's not the case, but the way he talks is very impassioned and seems to really, really like and respect Monza and what she's done. And I think that's probably true. He probably does very much respect her actions and what she's commanded, but is also threatened by it and has to deal with it. Feels like he has to deal with it.
That's fair. And that is sort of the intention. Other than that, he seems really complimentary of her. Like he genuinely seems to like her outside of the inclination that he gets, based perhaps in his own family's history, which is interesting, being that his own family, of which you could call an upstart family, was just a mercenary and lowly and poor before that. I think it was his grandfather was a mercenary, or great-grandfather was a mercenary. So his dukedom is not long in this world.
Seized power.
Yeah.
And probably sees a lot of him in Monza.
I really have like a hard time of not reading into the irony and talking about the result of what happens here. But a lot of Orso's lines are tinged with that upcoming assassination, and even Ganmark's, and like we mentioned, Malthus hanging around, like everything. There's an unspoken word in the room, which is that this is to be her death in the moment. And this is kind of everyone's final conversation in a lot of way with the pair of them.
And this is them. The majority of this conversation is them alone. Like they leave the room, don't they? Like he says, let's go speak in open air.
Yeah, they go out to a balcony.
Yeah. They're private at least a little bit, but until the point of where he said, I think the quote is, "Nothing commands obedience like a good example."
Mm-hmm.
Before that, everything, even on additional reads, feels genuine and doesn't really give much away as far as like a hint at what his plans are. But that line specifically feels very sinister in retrospect.
It's also the, like, you deserve to be celebrated and you will be celebrated in the streets, right? Like that is in and of itself some foreshadowing. It doesn't hint at the end result, right? Because it's like, oh yeah, no, I deserve that.
That's true.
But yeah.
That's a good point.
There are a couple of different things that kind of flirt with that idea. I think the only other one that I would directly point to from Orso is when he's talking with Malthus about staying around for what's about to happen. Yeah. Right. So Orso, for the most part, isn't letting the cards show, but everyone else, in some subtle way, for the most part, is. Outside of, I think, Gaba doesn't really open his mouth, but yeah. But, obviously this all has to do with the fact of like the forces of Duke Salier being put down at Borletta, the position against Visperine and Austria, Duke Rogant, and leading to the crowning. The real goal here for Orso, as we set his objective in the story, is to become king of Styria, of which he is just a duke of some import, which kind of interestingly sets the whole Therese thing in a very different tone for me here. I don't know how you feel about that, but it does like paint that relationship a little bit differently. In my mind.
Yes and no. So she was always was she always referred to as Princess Therese? She was before she was married. Yeah, She was always referred to as Princess Therese. Am I right in assuming that there is no king? There is no like monarch of Styria at all? Like it's all
not at the moment. There's the League of Eight and there's Duke Orso, right? Like,
yeah. So the fact that another power, well, it's all bias. So fuck. I don't know what it actually says.
It's lending legitimacy, to someone who isn't necessarily the legitimate ruler. She's still royalty in a subtle way, in a feudal system, she's still important.
Yeah.
But
and there is something to be implied.
Is so misfounded in my mind.
There's an implication that if the League of Eight hasn't been able to subdue Orso, Talins is on equal footing as the other 8 provinces of Styria. So if he is as powerful as half of the country, it feels maybe implied that he's the most powerful man in Styria.
Yeah, I don't think that's wrong.
Yeah.
I think that's a correct assumption, given what we're given. I also think the League of Eight may no longer be 8 people, and some of the provinces that we've mentioned have obviously been subdued, so there may not be opposing forces in them anymore. So he's probably... Talins isn't necessarily the size of 8 provinces, but he has control of a couple of others.
So it's like the Big Ten having like...
If that makes sense.
18 teams now or whatever it has.
No. And the reason I say that is because I think you're on to something with the 9 provinces, like the League of 8 against 1, right? 8 against 1. But now there's only 4 members of the League of 8 left.
Gotcha.
Which I guess is kind of like the Big Ten being 18. It's the opposite, but
It is the opposite, but the name has remained, even though the number of members has not.
And maybe some of them are still alive and functioning in other governments and things like that. But
also, I don't know how many teams are in the Big Ten. I know it's more than 10, though. It is like 13, I think, something like that.
It was some really weird number for a while, and I know that they keep like expanding it and then removing schools and adding schools, especially in like, I think Iowa keeps getting fucked in the Big Ten randomly, but
when are they not?
Like the state, the whole state, because there's like 3 schools that are competitive. Also true. Yeah, so weird. So weird. Yeah. So eventually, we're looking at maybe the king of Styria, perhaps.
Then we can call him Prince. But I'll still think of him as a count.
Well, she's queen now, but yeah.
No, I meant
I'll still think of him. Yeah,
the other guy.
Arya. Right. Arya.
It is interesting that she never, like, there is a countess, like her lover, countess, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Is she of one of the
Shalair?
League of 8?
Who knows? Her name is Shalair. We don't have her last name.
Okay.
So, Orso declares the triumph that she deserves and shall receive, and her brother gets stabbed in the throat, and she gets garroted and thrown down a mountainside. I'm not doing justice to the craziness that is this like 4-page torture scene, murder scene, blood on the ground, and everything like that, as she then lands on her brother, of whom was also thrown over the parapet on the side of the mountain. Barely survives, grunting, breathing breaths, just in the craziest fucking way. But a fun start to a novel, huh?
Yeah, super fun. I'm glad we've got another really happy-go-lucky story intro. Crossland, you always pick the happiest books for me.
Yeah, I like to think so. First chapter of this book started the way the last one did, And by the last one, I mean the entirety of the first law is one book. So
yeah, I took it as that.
Same thing, just landed in water, Logan got lucky, landed in water. Monza did not get lucky, landed on brother. Very different.
It's 70% the same.
Oh, man. I truly, though, I'm not giving it enough credit because it is a brutal scene as Ben is massacred, Yeah.
So good. But fucking insane.
Yeah. It's a riotous start to this story, I would say.
Yeah. We end this chapter with the bone thief, right?
No, that's the beginning of the next.
That's the beginning of the next chapter.
We go to Shivers next, and then we get the bone thief.
Yeah. We just get her wheezing and like trying to fuck, man.
It's fucked. Like her on the ground, like trying to say Benna's name is awful, And one of the last things that they like exchange, it's not the last thing, but I think it's one of the last things, is they say that they love each other, of course, and there's like that nice exchange. But yeah, she's just hurring on the ground like 3 or 4 times, as she tries to say anything.
And the name of the chapter,
Benna Mercado saves life.
Yeah. It sucks. That really, it hurts.
It's pretty good.
It's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck.
Yeah. She lands in the waste of Orso's kitchen, sprawled out helpless in the midst of rotten vegetables and cooking slime, stinking awful left over from last month's magnificent meals. Yeah. Jagged, mindless sound. She was embarrassed by it almost, but couldn't stop making it. Animal horror, mad despair. The groan of the dead in hell. Like, holy shit. Mr. Abercrombie. Truly, I think one of the reasons that this book hits me the most is the first law is incredible. I love it. Abercrombie took out the pen and like just put a little extra stank on the prose in this book in a way that I don't think he really did with like Last Argument in particular.
Right.
Yeah.
I think you're totally right.
And there are some wonderful, wonderful comparisons. And like, I think that this stays going forward as well. But like this book just hit different for me.
Yeah. If this prologue is made to set expectations for the book, the bar is high.
The bar is high. I also, one other note, I like that it's not billed as a prologue. A lot of people are like, I hate prologues. And the fact that this has a chapter title as opposed to a number or being called explicitly prologue, just like the end in the last book, it is a prologue for all intents and purposes. But
because we're going into part 1, right?
Yeah.
So this is effectively part 0.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I think this book could hypothetically work without this chapter. I don't think it'd be...
I don't think that's true. Without the delineation between this being part 1 and part, otherwise. I think my whole point is that, a lot of people think that prologues, when they're billed as prologues, are unnecessary and immediately flinch at them, and it's clever to not refer to it as a prologue. I think was more my point.
That's fair.
That makes sense. It's a workaround of the problem.
Yeah.
We don't have a problem with prologues. I love prologues. I think they're great. They said it. I don't think
I've ever met anybody that doesn't, or nobody has expressed to me that they dislike prologues.
A lot of people on the internet don't like prologues.
A lot of people on the internet have a lot of bad opinions.
All right. With that, part 1, Talins. So I love that each of these parts start in this way, which is a little bit fun. We'll kind of get into it, but we've got a quote here to begin with. To have a good enemy, choose a friend. He knows where to strike. Which is a quote from Diane de Poitiers.
Crossland, you would be my greatest enemy. Enemy. Sorry, not enemy.
I prefer enemy. I liked enemy. Yeah. Diane de Poitiers, by the way, was the mistress of Henry II and was all over art in the Renaissance.
So all of these... Has Joe chosen a single quote on any of these part intros? Has there been a quote that hasn't been a factual historical quote, other than the ones from Total War?
Out of the, I don't want to set expectations here.
There hasn't been an internal quote from the universe that he himself has been writing.
Yes, they've all been external quotes. That's the best way to put it. They're not all, I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, they're not all external from here. And by that, I mean, sorry, they are all still external quotes, meaning speaking to us outside of the world. They are not internal to the world. But
they're not necessarily historical.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So far, the only one has been the first one, right?
Yeah, which is an adjustment of a quote, but specifically it is the quote from Total War, the version of the quote that's in Total War, which is very funny.
Yeah. Cool. Sounds good. Did he know that when he put it in? I assume so.
He was playing the shit out of Total War. He knew.
I know. But did he know that quote wasn't the actual quote?
Oh, I don't know. I would doubt it. I bet personally, given the grave, I know that you've watched none of Joe Abercrombie's interviews, but he is so flippant and indifferent. It is so fucking funny. Obviously, this is why he's so funny in his writing as well. But he's so flippant and indifferent to things that I think that he's like, no, I just fucking believed it, man, and I put it in my book. What do you want? that would be his response. Okay, getting back on task here, because there's so much to talk about. We're just breaking into the part. Holy shit,
Brandon.
Yeah,
my cocktail's gone.
I knew
my
that
beer's halfway
first
gone.
I don't have a beer, so I only have my cocktail, and it's almost gone, and I need to make another one. But we open part 1 with something new to the series, something a little bit different. Perhaps standalones are experimenting with formats, we might say. But there's a past reflection as we flash back to Giappo Mercato and the pair of siblings' father, as we learn it, training Monscaro in how to use a sword, as well as teaching how to plant seeds to sow as he dies. What's your read on this and what it reflects on Mons' character?
So first and foremost, we have kind of gotten flashbacks.
Okay.
In the form of dreams from Glocta, but it's not the same thing, so I'll give it to you.
Sure. Yeah.
Not quite.
They are all similarly in italics, I guess, some of the time.
Yeah. Anyway, I think this says a great, like this whole section and how Monza reacts to it says a great deal about her ability to suppress her own emotions when she needs to, or when she feels like she needs to, and do absolutely whatever needs to be done to survive and to provide for her loved ones. This is where we get the background of Benna being kind of a sickly child. Like he's the one that should have gotten the sword training, and like Monza took his place in all of that because he was always sick and always weak and bedridden and whatever. So it creates that sibling dynamic, but also an understanding of how callous by necessity Monza can be.
Yeah. It does give her like survival instinct, right? Like she is survive at whatever needs be.
Yeah.
Met. Yeah.
And sentiment is a luxury.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of.
That's a great perspective. Yeah. Great way of summarizing that. So, yeah. Good work. Cool. With that, we move into the first chapter of part 1, Land of Opportunity. We then cut over to a brand new perspective on an old character, that of Cull Shivers, of whom has made his way to Talins on the recommendation of a merchant fuckboy, and is shocked that it isn't as warm as he was promised, as we get a street view of Styrian life, and he gets a view on his own grand new adventure of life for himself.
Yeah. I am so excited to live in Shivers' head. Styria doesn't seem to be what he's promised. It seems like maybe he should have trusted his gut and turned right around and taken the ship right back. Mm-hmm. But he did what he did, and
he's setting out to be a new man.
Yeah, exactly. And I love the gap that we get.
3 years.
We get this. What was that?
3 year
no,
gap.
No, not that gap. Oh. The gap between this chapter, where we're seeing him like navigate Styria for the first time and understanding things are a lot more expensive than I thought, and people aren't as like nice as I thought, and not a long time, a few weeks, whatever it is, but like the gap to him being destitute so very quickly. Like we get him with a handful of coins, or like a pocket full of coins, and then being surprised by like, oh, this gross, gristly piece of meat is like, I could buy a breeding pair of sheep for this much in the north. Just, it's such a well done setup and then payoff of becoming destitute in a new city without almost any actual page time, showing how he gets there.
You're so right, and I do appreciate that kind of view on the perspective as someone of whom made a choice not all that dissimilar at a point in my life.
At least
I get the hope.
Your apartment had you had pigeons for roommates, but you had a room.
I also wasn't destitute by any stretch, and I would never suggest otherwise. But that same sense of like youthful optimism, right?
Yeah,
and so like I deeply relate to Shivers in this moment, being like, new man, new me, here's what I'm gonna do. And to be fair, on a comparison standpoint, I think I did a lot better than Shivers did, because I did actually change habits and behaviors, and I feel pretty good about. I do understand sort of the fear and anxiety and everything else that he's kind of getting into here, as he kind of like stumbles into people and otherwise like has unfortunate encounters and like doesn't understand, is paying more for food than he's ever been used to in his life, which is also super correct. Going to the grocery store and getting hot dogs and buns costing $12 is crazy, or was crazy at the time. Yeah. So yeah, there was just like a lot of different things that personally I related to here. I'm curious, and I actually don't know this. I don't know if I feel solidly about this answer. Personally, I feel like the timeline that we experience here between these chapters, and I'm interested to hear your take, is Monza Mercato falls off the cliff. Same day, Shivers arrives. 3 months pass, and then we pick up in the Bone Thief and otherwise. I think that's or somewhere in the middle there.
Shivers mentions having been there for a few weeks.
Okay.
I feel like.
And it could be a case of, because they get into the new year. This is within the Bone Thief. He describes that it's been 3 months since he got her off of falling. Then 12, she recovers.
Yeah, a little over 12
This could
weeks.
also be that. Yeah. Could be her recovery time is the split. Yeah. That would make sense too.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
But I know in my brain during, like, while Shivers is kind of on, like, waiting for work and, like...
Yeah, he says he had been here for weeks, so... Yeah, you're right. It's just the recovery period then
and
within.
He also mentions
Thief.
how little his gold or his money actually lasted, and I don't think that was very long either. So I would have put it at like a month since he arrived.
At most, yeah. I would say that's probably about right. I was conflating, I think, the weather with the changes, if that makes sense, in addition to the recovery time. So I was like, it's that time. It's clearly just the recovery time, or about that much time.
Yeah.
By that I mean the recovery time since she awakens in the Bone Thief. So
right. Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah. There are a couple of, this is a pretty short chapter. There are a couple of like lovely small moments that happen throughout here, you know, that kind of describe the street view of Styrian life, which is fun. One is the skewer of meat that you'd mentioned that he pays way too much money for and feels crazily cheated out of. You know, the barrel of sheep comparison is great as we get this idea of what things are and what things are worth. And that's so interesting considering there were so many marks used to buy things in the last book versus the Styrian currency. Sorry. Were they marks before? Or are they marks now?
They were marks before.
Marks before. They are scales now. Scales are super, like, it's a crazy amount of money by comparison. Buying a barrel of fish for a scale, you know. But there are all these different moments. He shoulders a guy, gets really mad, pulls him out, threatens him over top of, like, what feels like a almost, man, I almost said Vienna. It's not Vienna. Venetian, like, canal that's there, as pulls him out over this bridge over water. But he realizes that the man made a genuine mistake. He's just a small little guy, and that was the old him now that he needs to let go, as he sort of ragefully sought him out and fought him almost.
Yeah, that caught me off guard, truly. Obviously, we know he's carried a rage towards Logan for vengeance for his brother for most of his life. But anytime that he's been described or interacted with or anything, he's always felt very mild-mannered. So to see something really aggressive and really, like, intense show its face was surprising to me.
Yeah, I mean, he's in a new place, uncomfortable, weird, you know.
True.
Doesn't know what's going on.
But also, like, clearly he has shown aggression in the past. Like, he's a named man. He is a warrior of the North. Like, it's very hard to imagine that he hasn't shown violence and aggression in his life, but we just haven't been exposed to it very much.
Yeah, not in the same way, at the very least. There's this, like, quote note here that I really like, and it kind of resonates throughout the rest of this as well, where he says, "Seemed being a better man might be harder work than he'd thought." It's a good
quote. It's a really good quote. And he has a lot of good quotes. And weirdly, this is the comparison to Logan that I talked about or preambled with a little bit. He has his own sort of, I don't know if you'd call it an aphorism like we did with Logan, but we do get a mantra of his that was repeated by his brother of what you give. It's what you give out that makes a man, not what you get back. And he repeats that often, I think, throughout the whole section, right? Yeah. He kind of recognizes that that's maybe a folly at the point when he interacts with the captain. But
yeah, he's kind of, you know, he's,
Would you call that
I think
an aphorism?
I think so. I think that one of the things that I would say about an aphorism is generally there's a little bit of a cultural, or at the very least in the way that I think about it, there's like a little bit of a cultural thing to it, or like there's something principled about it in some way, but they're also like pithy, like they're,
yeah. Whereas this isn't super pithy.
Yeah, but
you could make it so.
Yeah,
kind of like
it could be
the
reduced.
actual quotes from Logan versus what like he shortens them to.
Yeah. Right. Like even seemed being a better man might be harder work than he thought is like the complex version of being a better man is hard, or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's aphorism. But I think you're apt to describe it that way.
Yeah. Or
cool.
I'm mostly just trying to draw the comparison between all of the repeated phrases from Logan.
Yeah, I think the fact that it's repeated makes it sort of a refrain, an aphoric refrain.
I like the term mantra for it, but we'll see.
Mantra's good. Yeah. Cool.
If there are more.
All right. Fair enough.
So far it's just
we know the Northmen.
It's just the what you get or what you put in versus what you get back.
Yeah. There's a couple of being a better man's harder than it should be, but yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
It
happens later too. But yeah, those two are our like current going sort of statements. But yeah, anything else on shivers to start with? Obviously, we get more shivers later, but
I'm good on shivers for now.
All right, so our final, not our final,
final
nowhere near our final
before the midpoint.
Our final of the half is the Bone Thief, of which I'm very excited to talk about here. So we then return to Monza, of whom wakes surrounded by skeletal remains. People's remains. She sees all sorts of instruments on a nearby table, pincers, pliers, needles, scissors, saws, and scores of knives to boot. She squeaks at a word and is greeted by a figure in the doorway, looking almost misshapen with a bag over his shoulder until it's clear that he's not and that he's as ordinary more than anything else, and he's a man with a Union accent to boot, of whom has healed her. What do you make of our curious Bone Thief?
He is creepy and weird and so very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
How much you want to bet one of these bones that she's surrounded by is her brother?
Ooh, for sure. I think it's. I don't know that that's up for debate.
It's got to be, right? He's not going to leave a perfect specimen.
It was a body,
an okay specimen that got like smashed a little bit.
He's just a bone thief. Like he's collecting bones. It's a human body next to like a human. Yeah, there's no way. There's no way it's not. There's a bone.
Do you think any of the bone grafts that she received were her brother?
That I don't think. I don't know, because she didn't really get bone grafts. You know what I mean? She got coins in her skull. She also he wasn't able to like fix her hips. Like her hip is misaligned. He really just like cut and rearranged and kept things together, of which were smashed or otherwise disassembled.
I do love that we're getting information on a new group of people, a new these physicians. Seemingly they're not magical. I don't think there's anything magical about them. Like they're strictly like actual physicians.
Mm-hmm.
But I like that there's another guild and another group of people that we're dealing with, and this guy being an outcast for pushing the envelope too much is
in his field. Yeah.
So good. It's such a good background to have. And
the fact that his master didn't like what he was doing, you know what I mean?
His master
there's that
and
whole
the entirety
context
of the field. He calls out his master specifically, but he also calls out all of the accepted understanding of the field, which is not uncommon in people that come up with crazy advancements in technology and medicine and things like that. Historically, this isn't that uncommon to be in that scenario. I think it's more uncommon now. I think there are. I don't think there are a lot of people performing renegade studies that advance technology in significant ways in the last 80 years, probably.
In health? Hang on.
Renegade studies that would be seen as like illegal.
I would love to introduce you to a little company called Theranos, which did
That's a good point.
little for the benefit. There are numerous other examples, of course. But
did they actually push? Did they actually like come up with novel solutions to problems without like going through?
No, fair point. They were fraudulent, but there are a couple of other examples that I think fall within the same schema of being like,
like there's a lot of like scams and a lot of like
right. Even some of the early
acting
like
outside
cloning
laws,
companies,
but people that actually come up with novel solutions and novel therapies to things.
Psilocybin therapy is generally considered illegal, and like MDMA, those are two. Yeah, but generally speaking, you're correct. I'm not trying to dissuade. I can think of and know a couple of examples, but generally speaking, yes, it is infrequent, and so it's cool to have this perspective that's like, pushing the envelope, like you said a couple of times. Like, it's cool. He's just a fucking weirdo. He even declines to share his name. Yeah.
He's just a fucking weirdo. Still, again, I mentioned this before when talking about the other union guy, but I'm curious if there's anyone that we are connected to that knows this guy. I have less faith that that's the case, and little faith that we actually, I think he shows up again. We'll see. But curious similarity in delivery. He sounds a lot like Quai, as read by Pacey.
Okay.
Which problems with him being Quai. I don't think he's Quai. but I did recognize that like he does have a similar vocal affectation,
union accent,
when read by Pacey. Interesting. But notably, like Quai isn't a union kid.
I mean, he's not a northern. Oh no, he's from the old empire. Good point. Yeah. But she clocks his accent as union.
Yeah, and I don't think there was like a significant like accent attributed to Quai. This is strictly like. This is extra textual because we're strictly talking about the way that Stephen Pacey delivers the character. So like that's not canon and not anything. But
you say that. What's funny is, again, per Leanne's point, Joe kind of considers Stephen Pacey's take as canon. However he says words, he's like, that sounds good. And he's like, perfect.
Yeah. It is funny that the Styrian, no, it's not the Styrians.
Pharaoh, yeah.
Pharaoh is from not Gurkle, but
what's it? Oh man, one of the subcultures that was taken over by Gurkle.
Yeah, Cantic. Yeah. So them being French is her specific example, but
yeah. And what's very funny about that note to me also is that like the first book came out, he had already written the series. The trilogy was done. It had to be edited. It had to be re-edited, but like the trilogy was done when it was sold for the most part. He had to like go through and piece things together. So then when he was going through and editing, he's like, let's make her French and then like define the culture that way, which is a really fun note on top of everything.
That is fun.
Yeah.
But anyway, like there's still nothing textually connecting this. Is my point.
Fair.
Is, like I'm only drawing this sort of connection based on Pacey's deliverance or delivery.
Fair enough.
Not deliverance.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Yeah. Anyway.
Deliverance. Yeah. So he gets into it with her as they're chatting, of course. Further, talking about the bodies for his work, calls her a rather lucky woman that he's managed to reassemble, states that pain is likely to be her constant companion, before he introduces her to Husk, and we're presented with the description of this drug. My curiosity bells, PJ, are ringing. What did you think of Husk, and is there any analog that you see as she uses it and is pulled into a mosaic?
So,
over the course of puffs.
Seemed to me the analog that I would draw would be opium.
That's kind of my comparison too. Somewhere between opium and heroin, but yeah.
Well, I mean, Heroin's a derivative of opium.
It's more opium. Yes, it's more. Yes. But it seems stronger conventionally than the way that I've heard opium described, if that makes sense.
Can you smoke heroin?
You can smoke anything, PJ.
Well,
that was not the answer you wanted. I'm so sorry.
It's a perfect answer. Okay, fair. Yeah. But yeah, as far as like smoking something for pain
Right.
management feels very specifically
very opium.
Yeah. We do get a note later on that this isn't her first introduction to husk. She hasn't taken it before, but she has been around it in that Benna was a husk user. I don't know if she mentioned. I don't think she mentions it here. She talks.
No, it's
Sejam.
later with Sejam. Yeah, Sejam mentions it when she asks for it as a part of their like deal. Much later, Sejam's like, "Wait, that's your brother's thing, not yours." And she looks down pretty hardcore on husk as a thing, and then takes it, and then is transported away, and her opinion and position evaporates. Yeah,
I mean, understandably, I think. Given her specific scenario.
Fair enough. As someone of whom is immune to opiates, I have no fucking idea. I have no clue. Our family is fucked in this one way, which is that pain meds are bad and they don't work. So,
yep,
no idea. But I will assume.
Sounds good. I think I've been prescribed Oxycontin like one time for like a dental surgery.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember it actually doing
was it. Not,
I'm sure it did
probably
something,
wasn't your eye surgery.
Like,
right. No,
I don't remember
also
feeling
like
anything
in the
specific
form that
it.
we're conventionally having it in our everyday lives is not the same as smoking opium, you know.
That's true too.
You're releasing it in a very different way and you're intaking it in a very different way. It's going to hit systems differently versus being digested.
Next time we're together, Crossan and I, for Benna, we'll smoke opium together.
PJ, I just said that I'm immune to opiates. I just explained.
Yeah, but you also just said that smoking it's different. Have you tried smoking opium, Crossland?
I don't think that makes a difference.
It's
a receptor thing. No, in the way that it's released, I said that it's different. Not that it's overall different. Not like the... Oh my God. You are right. You did catch me in my own specificity, but like... I figured that it was enough to get away with it. All right. Fine.
I'm not smoking opium with you. You do that shit.
I'm not smoking opium. We'll have a cigar instead. So after her stint of smoking opium ends, husk, she awakes again and we catch the news. She's been in this man's care for a little over 3 months. He says 12 weeks as the new year has reared its ugly head and we've moved through winter in Styria and she's freed from her straps keeping her down. She's kind of tied to this bed, of course, but that's mostly, as he explained, so that she wouldn't fall off and like injure herself and make all the damage worse and kind of a fit. Yeah, you don't want to break anything. You've already broken so much. The bone thief laughs darkly. But she is able to stand up and kind of see herself in the mirror, a scarred and butchered carcass in place of her former self in a lot of ways. The bone thief, of course, is impressed with his own work on her, recounting the many impressive fixes, that of her skull replaced with coins, the leg needing to be shortened by the way in which it broke, and many more smaller injuries. In many ways, I find her to be a specter or a ghost of who she once was.
I like this description of her, and I like that we get her own commentary on like how hideous she's become and how closely it is like there's not a lot of pages between here and Shiver's description of how beautiful she is, you know, like I like this side by side, and Shiver is seeing her as even more and more beautiful as he sees more and more of her, up until like and including the point where he sees her fully like cloak off. And no, even like not really any commentary after the fact when he sees her portrait on like the sign that Sejam has with Benna and Monza's face on it. So like there is a lot of weight that has to be put into the self perspective kind of things when it comes to to beauty, I guess. And we get that last book or a couple books ago, I guess, with Giselle and his jawline and things.
Yeah, it's a similar reflection in some ways. Yeah, that juxtaposition is actually a really good one to bring up, and I hadn't considered it as closely or as tightly. Some of this comes with like distance from it and like rereading it so many times, but that's a great comparison. Yeah.
But there, as I mentioned earlier, there is the comparison between Glocta and his disfigurement, right down to the stairs problem. Like she complains later on, still not right here, but later on when she's fleeing the bone thief, as it were, the stairs problem.
Right.
Like they obviously sustained their malformities in very different ways, but to a similar end as far as the physicality goes, other than the teeth.
Yeah. Yeah. In many ways, this feels like it almost feels like we're getting the midpoints of like, if I want to draw this comparison, we didn't see Glocta escape the hands of his torturers, right? And this feels like evaluating your body for the first time after being disfigured and changed.
Yeah.
And that's something we didn't have with Glocta. So it's interesting to get from Monza now, even though it's much less severe in many forms and formats. It's not that it's not a disablement, but it is not the same sort of disfigurement.
Right. But it is still a disfigurement.
Right. It's not as intentional either, which is another thing.
Right.
Like he was tortured intentionally. This was
he
was
was
intended to die,
intentionally
which is very different
and hobbled.
Yeah.
And she was fixed, but not to full strength.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So we then see some flashes of a montage of her coming back to herself, trying to close her fist, failing, him closing it for her as a part of that. There's examining of her skull and her hair growing retention, her beginning to walk again and train herself again, to a moment in which he leaves and she takes her opportunity and hobbles out of there and onto the street, free and away of her caretaker.
Tricky. On secondary read-throughs or additional read-throughs, I appreciated the tip-off of what she was up to when she would like get up and undergo basically additional training for walking and moving around after the bone thief left. But Joe did a good job of subverting expectations of what she was up to and like not giving away the fact that she was truly like or very subtly giving away the fact that she was faking the excruciating pain in standing up.
Yeah. Yeah. And sort of her ability to press forward through that pain to like function herself otherwise.
I got the impression that she truly is in pain here.
Yeah. Oh yeah. She definitely is, but she can forge harder than she's giving the impression of.
But I think given the fact that she gets up and like moves around and leaves, tells me maybe the pain that she's describing is exaggerated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just realized just a small note here that I wanted to maybe bring up. Of all of the properties that we've covered on the show, many have whisperings, inklings of adaptations to TV and to movies. This one has a deal on the table as well. So one of the things that I definitely want to make sure that we're kind of bringing up upon occasion is kind of reflecting on what this would look like in the likely adaptation. And maybe this is also a place in which, for the first time ever on the show, I may perhaps make a prediction or two about things.
That'll be fun.
Yes, and we can kind of hold that sort of mutually accountable. But that would be like, it's a long play. That's not going to happen until they're not in pre-production yet, which means they haven't like solidified anything, completely. So with the star attached, we're good. With the director attached, we're generally better. So that combination is good. The script's already written. So just produce it, you fuckers. And then we'll see.
Are you saying there is a star and director attached or not yet?
Yeah. Tim Miller, who directed the first Deadpool movie and also has been doing Love, Death, Robots with David Fincher for the last however many years. They're in charge of that project. In addition, Joe Abercrombie wrote it. And what's her name? Silo. She's in Silo. Rebecca Ferguson. She's also in Dune.
Gotcha.
Just couldn't remember her name. Is slated to play Monza.
Interesting.
Yeah. So anyway, core point being, when things come up and they make sense, I might make like little adaptation predictions where we can talk about it and like have fun. And then, if and when, I'm going to just say when that happens, we'll talk about it. But this is a great one that I think will absolutely be montaged in sort of a great haze, I think, of sorts. And we'll see her kind of come to her own, fake it with him, run in. Like, this is so perfectly cinematic. I see this being adapted very directly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she makes it out, of course. And as she does, it's really kind of sad as she finds herself in the mud and rain, reduced a little more than like nothing on the absolute streets, pissing herself and mad at all that was and all that's happened and could be, mad at Benna's death, bawling like a baby at all that was lost. Her whole family at this point, as far as we understand it, is dead and gone. With Benna being kind of the final straw. We saw Japo passed earlier. We have no idea about a mom, if there was one in the picture.
She died giving birth to Benna.
Yes, sorry. We do know that the mom is dead. We don't know her name, was kind of my thought. But
right.
Mix the two. You're right. She did die. So there's no one else. It is just her. All that is left in her own little world. She's been brutalized with everything that's happened under Gaba's boot and otherwise, and she settles. She's going to kill them. She's going to kill them all, and revenge is the path, and she is set out for it.
Gotta love a good story about vengeance, right?
Yeah, I love a good story about vengeance. Love a good vengeance story.
Yeah. This is also where Casca comes back up, right?
Casca technically comes back up for the first time in the first chapter, which I'll tell you does say something about Casca.
Does. It says he's dependable, which is, I guess we've kind of learned that he's, no, truly. I think it says that he is somebody that has cemented himself into Monza's brain as somebody that she works well together with and has worked historically with.
Yes. I don't think that makes someone dependable, though.
Well,
for the listeners at home, I flinched at PJ's definition of dependable on Casca.
But I guess I'm conflating it with what we know about Casca as well. And despite his, like, as long as he's being paid, he is dependable.
Yeah.
So far, at least.
Yeah.
In what we've experienced.
Personally, I don't think that reads wrong, I'll say. What I get from that little flash is that her dad is really important to her. Benna was really important to her. Casca is pretty important to her in some way.
That's fair.
We don't know. We don't know how, but we know that he is.
Yeah.
And we get more Casca throughout. And we got Casca earlier in a mention when she's talking with Benna. And we get more Casca
away.
Later. Yeah, pretty much right away. There's a lot of little Casca bombs going off.
Gotta love a Casca bomb.
Lot of Casca bomb. But yeah, she pisses herself though. That's real sad.
Yep.
Yeah.
Tries to piss and has a hard time of it. Like,
yeah,
bowels aren't working right.
To end the chapter, she returns to one of her and Benna's many hideaways. This, I think, is her house, right?
Yeah, it's the house that she grew up in.
Yeah.
The house that her mom died in. The house that the house that her dad died in. The house they grew up in.
Yeah, sad. It's their house, through the bushes and otherwise, and finds her things and finds a well-forged sword that was a gift for Benna many years ago, a Calvez, despite his own incompetence with the blade, as we've talked about a couple of times. And she takes it and thinks to end vengeance then.
Also, like, at least a single box of a shit ton of gold, but it felt implied that there was a lot of, or scales, sorry. Maybe it was gold. Yep. I can't remember. No, I think it was gold. I think it was a bunch of gold. And it says something along the lines of that single box contained so much, whatever it was, but it felt implied that there were multiple boxes that she grabbed. Like, she was talking about the description of a single unit, and
she has a fuck ton of money.
She just has a fuck ton of money. That's basically the impression that we get now.
There's a note that happens even earlier on, I would say, as we're kind of looking at the prologue or whatever, that is Faithless Carpi rejects this sort of assertion that Monza would have stolen from them, or that like Benna would have stolen from them, as there was some hoard of money from someone specific that was missing. And Faithful goes like, no, and kind of
she
decries it immediately.
The name here, right? It starts with an H, I think.
Ooh, you were pulling at like the one thing that I didn't pay incredible attention to, which is I knew what was happening here. Shovel. She digs it out of the ground, 30 strides, hack the bramble back. You have a devil in you, Casca used to tell her, which is said a couple of times, which is another maybe phrase. Yeah, vaulted cellar, because they've got the cellar that has a ton of money in it that she did dig up. Herman's gold glittered at her. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Small fortune in that box alone, and there's more in the rest.
Stolen gold.
Mm-hmm.
Just like the sunrise.
Yep. The vengeance, then.
Yep. Spilled blood.
All right.
Bad blood.
Bad blood. Sunrise of bad blood. All right, with that, let's get into our drink segment.
Mm-hmm.
PJ, what did you have for the first half of this episode? And by half, I mean we're an hour and 40 in.
Fuck, are we really? Jesus.
Yeah,
hour 45 in.
Although the back half, I think, will go a lot faster. To be fair, I almost put the Bone Thief on the back half because I thought it was going to be super long, but like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a drink called the Moon-Kissed Coconut. It's slightly different than what is specified, but it was published in a 1959 issue of Esquire magazine. The November 1959 Esquire magazine article from the mixologist Mariano Licudine. Licundi? Fuck, I don't know how would you pronounce that?
Yeah.
Licudine.
Whoa, no idea. I would have to look at it. That's fine.
Licudine? Sure. Mariana Licudine.
Luciadine?
Luciadine? That's
I don't fucking know, dude. Yeah.
That seems more Italian. We'll go with that one. I don't know. But I altered it a little bit based on what I had available to me. But I'll read what his spec is for this drink first, and then I'll tell you what I did. 1/2 ounce of lime juice, 1/4 ounce of simple syrup, 1/4 ounce of honey, 1/4 ounce of falernum, 1/2 ounce of coconut milk, 3/4 ounce West Indies rum, 1.5 ounce Puerto Rican light rum, 3/4 ounce Barbados rum, 2 dashes of Angostura, and then all mixed with crushed ice and served in a topped coconut or suitably attractive glass. And I did all of that with the exception of the rums. So what I did instead was 3/4 ounce of Smith & Cross Navy strength rum and 1.5 ounces of Plantation 3-star. And then I did a float of Trader Vic's 151 because I don't have I went out. I was in Minneapolis. I stopped at a liquor store that is known for having fucking everything. It's Zips Liquor in Minneapolis, if you're familiar, and picked up Velvet Falernum and Smith & Cross and 175 of 3-star Plantation. But I didn't think I needed another rum. So that's what I went with that, but it was fucking delicious, man. And then instead of pouring it into a coconut, because I don't have one, I just did it in a
Collins
glass, my tall, very pretty pints glass from Visky, and served it with a lime wheel and a sprig of mint. It's so good.
Cool. It sounds ridiculously good.
John Taylor Velvet Falernum tastes so good. And there's such a good reason why it's in a bunch of different tiki drinks, and I'm really, really excited to play with it. But this was the first one that I did anything with it. And then I also made cow soy for dinner tonight and just had some extra coconut milk. So I'm like, what can I do with coconut milk and Flarenum? And this is what came up.
Nice.
So anyway, tiki bullshit as always. But my back half beer, or my front half beer, I guess, is What If Numbers Aren't Real from Fair State and Pint House. And
that's so good. That's so
yeah.
Like what a good call of a beer to grab.
It's all spelled in leet speak.
Mm-hmm.
So fucking good. But I haven't had anything from Pint House before.
Yeah, their logo's
great. I
really
like their
poison.
Logo.
Yeah.
Like a poison logo with a little tilted pint glass.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I believe I will be picking up for my actual back half beer a Spirit Foul, also from Fair State Brewing Company.
Very good call. As such, I appreciate the numbers aren't real because especially we get in friendly in the next section. Yeah, that's like that's such a fun. Yeah, it's so good, so good. PJ, only had a cocktail in the front half, so I haven't had anything else yet. I'm probably gonna just make another one of what I made because it's really quick and easy. It's super good. I'm calling it Best Served Chilled. It's I'm so fucking dumb. It is 1.5 ounces of bourbon, 3/4 ounce Campari, 1/4 ounce maraschino liqueur, 3/4 ounce lemon juice, 3/4 ounce Demerara simple syrup, and then also 1/2 ounce of dry vermouth. And generally speaking, you wouldn't. This is on a weird fence of like you can, and many people do shake like vermouth drinks, but often vermouth is a sign of you're going martini style for the most part. So it's a stirred, but because of the citrus inclusion, it's like definitely shake to express. Not exclusively, but like a lot of vermouth is stirred, not shaken.
Yeah.
Rebutting. Not entirely. I'm not saying exclusively.
No,
but a lot.
I feel like I've always shaken a necromancer.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's got lemon and lime in it.
Yeah.
When you add citrus, you shake the vermouth. If not, you generally don't.
Right.
It's just a citrus thing, more or less. But there are a lot of
citrus thing.
Stirred vermouth cocktails. Anyway, shaken. This thing is so good. This is diabolically tasty. This is one of my favorite cocktails I've made on the show recently, for sure. It's an immediate hit. I love it.
This feels like something you could also do with rum.
Totally. I actually, PJ, I'm going to do the next one with rum. I'm going to do it with a Jamaican rum, and I will report back on what this is for the back.
Would you go lemon or would you go lime?
I only have lemon, so we're going lemon.
All right, sounds good.
Because I didn't want to buy too many more fresh ingredients.
I could do it with lime.
Yeah, you could do it with lime. You could give it a try. Yeah, I mean, beer. Very good. Do you have dry vermouth? Do you have vermouth?
I've got that bottle of Lillet.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
yeah. I've got did I mention my vermouth? It's really interesting. It's a California dry vermouth, which I've never had anything that isn't a European vermouth generally, or like a blend.
I've never heard of a like a New World vermouth.
Yeah, I'm gonna grab the bottle real quick. Yeah, I mean on the back here, it's Vya is the brand, VYA. Imagine a forest after the rain. This is the idea behind Vya Extra Dry. Lavender, sage, orris, linden furnish notes. It's a vermouth. It's very good though. This is like exactly what I like in vermouth personally, especially for Negronis. This is like perfect Negroni vermouth.
Nice.
Yeah. Because I like a dry, not a sweet. A lot of people go sweet vermouth, but I like dry vermouth in Negronis, which is wrong to most people, but they are wrong. I want the bitter notes. Anyway. Cool. I didn't have a back half beer. I just had that cocktail. So that's it.
Okay.
Are you
going to make another cocktail?
I'm going to make Best Served Chilled with rum. Yeah.
Okay. I'm excited to hear it.
Yeah. And we'll see how it goes. Could be better served chilled or something. I don't know. All right. With that, let's go to Fish Out of Water. We find Shivers on the dock in between jobs and reflecting on the lies of the Styrian merchant who recommended that he come here in the fucking first place. He's eating hard bread and shares it with another, showing that kindness that we found evident throughout Shivers' time in our trilogy. But also, everyone else comes begging to him, and he kind of has to like fend them off verbally, as beggars just beg for more.
He makes a good point. He says something along the lines of, if I had bread for everybody, why the fuck would I be here with you guys?
It's true. It's true. In addition, he's really frustrated being passed over for a job, and the guy that he gave bread to is selected for one. Chases down the fisherman asking for that job very specifically, and he's turned away. Like he's asking for a job. He's like insistent upon it in a way that he probably hasn't been. He's on his like last nerve in a lot of ways. So
yeah, we get that subsurface rage that we talked about a little bit bubbling up here too, in that threat to the captain after being rejected, saying like he knows about fighting, he knows about killing. And put that stick away, man. Yeah.
Presumptive. Also, like his rage is there, but he also has this sort of like presumption of equality. I think when he came here, of like equal chances, and that's just very much not the case. It reminds me in some ways, and this is kind of like an abject call out. And I think you've read it, so I don't feel like I'm fully out here in saying this. Maybe you didn't. Angela's Ashes has some similar moments as it surrounds sort of work in the life of like beggars during the plague and things like that. Beggar is totally the incorrect term, but oh man, it's one of the best nonfiction books I've ever read. It is a memoir of Frank McCourt's life as a Irishman during the potato famine and immigrating to America.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool.
Very good. Very good. Highly recommend in general. It is. Yeah, but it reminds me very much of kind of the similar tone of like, this is supposed to be the better land in so many different ways, and I've been sold a bill of goods. And that leads to a sort of, misery in a lot of ways. There's a loneliness as well that he feels, speaking of misery, as he's cornered by four men. He grumbles and then gets to fighting 4-on-1 despite the crummy odds, as they sort of like want his boots. And he bends over and then gets the guy right in the crotch in a moment, fends them off, and is then assisted in the final moments by a shadow of a woman in a hood with a sharp blade slicing at one of the guy's calves.
So it's very clearly not to the same level of dissociation that we get out of the Bloody Nine when he takes over Logan's body, basically. But there are a few lines in this section that make it seem like this attack on the four men wasn't a willful act. Shivers goes along with it, but he kind of remarks on how he's being pulled along by the actions that are happening without actually willing them into existence.
Yes, and this brings a good debate, even about the Bloody Nine to some degree, right? Because is the Bloody Nine Logan or not is like a persistent question, I think, throughout the series in some ways. Is it actually an otherworldly possession?
I think the question's more apt here, whereas the Bloody Nine feels
I'm not even
clear.
asking that, right? Like the Bloody Nine thing is interesting. This is, in my opinion, less like that. I definitely see the comparison that you're drawing, and more of this is a weird callback to a different series, but it's reminiscent of moments in Morningstar with Darrow, in which he just kind of does the thing, and between the lines has made the choice to do the thing. And that's sort of the way that I take it as well. Yeah. But it is concerning in other ways for Shivers because it is so fucking natural for him, right? Like that's the thing, right? He's trying to be a better man, but this is natural.
Yeah. But he does, like, just the commentary that he has internally, like, because we are uninterruptedly in his internal monologue throughout all of this.
Yeah.
And he mentions, like, maybe this was just too degrading for his body to handle.
Right. Yeah. He's starving. He's past the point.
Yeah. But he never acknowledges the fact that he decided to start this fight or to engage at all.
Yeah, I guess a question is he disassociating from that choice, like actively, or is it passive? Is sort of kind of what you're getting at.
That's the question.
Is he actively choosing to skip past it, or is he passively choosing? I'm of the mind. Go ahead.
No, I'm of the mind that there's nothing Bloody Nine like happening here.
Mm-hmm.
But it's being described that way.
Sure. Yeah. That's fair. Yeah, I'm of the mind that this is definitely not Bloody Nine-like, but I think he is disassociating somewhat just because he doesn't want to, he wants to be a different man, and he wants to live the life that Vossala told him that he could live here, you know?
This is the whole fucking point. The whole reason.
Fucking Vossala. Yeah.
Yeah.
He didn't want to have to beat the shit out of people, but he's saved by a woman with a blade, of course, of whom we know to be Monza.
Also, I think he would have won anyway. I think he would have.
I think
maybe he would have gotten
yeah.
hurt a little bit more, but I don't think he would have lost.
Yeah,
but
it seemed almost implied. Also, it could have been a death wish. There's the third side of this where Shivers is fed up and is choosing death,
realizing that option. If his boots are taken, he'll probably die anyway.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a couple of different
now
layers.
Actively or die later passively were the choices.
Yeah. So from that grim moment, we then cut to a big old plate of food in front of our hungry boy Shivers as he just downs some mashed potatoes and other things, not even tasting it as it passes into his mouth, which is such a fun description.
Yeah.
Did you have anything to say on the potato front?
I mean, fucking love mashed potatoes, man. It's easy to eat mashed potatoes really fucking quickly, too.
I got hungry reading this again for the fourth time this week last night as I was writing this note in particular. Or sorry,
so
I wrote this one this morning. I got hungry
for dinner.
Yeah, I literally made gnocchi because I was like, potatoes sound incredible. Yeah, so literally inspired my meal today that I had for dinner because I was like, oh my God, potatoes. And yeah, I'd frozen gnocchi, so I heated it up because that's how you make gnocchi in a big old batch and then you freeze it and then you can have it whenever you want. It's the way to do it.
There you go.
Yeah.
Hot tip
in case you want gnocchi whenever you want. But their conversation is a bit adversarial as it's clearly an exchange or deal between the two of them, but she explains the deal nonetheless. Shivers is to go and find Sajam and tell him to meet Nakomo in the usual place, and that will earn him a scale, which can buy him a barrel full of fish. And she also extends a secondary offer that he can earn up to 50 scales if he does that, and then he helps her kill a man. And while accepting the offer with a knife between his legs, he repeats, I didn't say I'd kill anyone, just that I'd help you. Yeah.
Yeah. This is such a well-constructed plan from Monza's part. She knows the amount of money to promise to entice and knows to lure somebody into her grips a little bit with no strings attached, easy first task, but also has all of the cards and could, if he were... Do you think she would just let him go?
Baited the hook. Yeah.
Do you think she'd let him go if he said no?
No, absolutely not. I think the entire intent here is that she would absolutely kill him.
She might specifically say that later on.
That's why the knife is in between his legs. Yeah. Is because after she tells him that she's going to kill someone, she's like, you don't really have a choice.
Right.
But he still consigns himself to make the choice.
Mm-hmm. But even later on, there's not that threat of immediate bodily harm.
Right. Yeah, later on, I think that's a genuine choice, but she's manipulating, which is different.
Yeah. But at that point, if he said no, do you think she would let him go?
Yeah, but I don't think that he was at risk of saying no. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I don't think
fair.
At that point, he's past the pale, he's bit the hook, he's in, right?
Yeah.
So there isn't much that's required past that point. But yeah, in that circumstance, I feel like she probably would have let him go, or he would have been on the short list of people to pick off quickly afterwards. Not immediately, but quickly.
Yeah.
Pay him to go out of town. There are a couple of options, but
right.
Yeah. So Shivers follows through on the deal, finding Sajam and getting him to meet Nakomo at the usual place. There's a whole wonderful scene that happens there.
It's a good scene.
That's just great. There's not a whole lot to comment on, but it's cool little introduction to a criminal underworld, which is not something we've gotten in the other books. So it's cool to have this sort of other presentation, which is fun.
Yeah.
We're playing in a den of vipers for once, which is different. Yeah. Yeah. And he owes Casca a debt, so he ends up agreeing, of course. When he gets there, he finds out that it isn't Casca, but it is the long-rumored dead Monza Mercato. He brings up the details of the last several weeks, the death that had been pinned on Duke Rogant in the League of Eight, and the parades that were had in her and her brother's honor, all of these different things, and posters, and yada yada. But she still, despite the deception, he still is pretty pro her. He likes her. Like, he's, deception aside, he's glad to see her.
And I mean, not a whole lot of deception. She didn't really have a choice to be like, she was unconscious for most of the last few weeks.
Oh, no, I mean the deception on the side of getting him to meet her.
Oh, that. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
My first read through of this, I had been so caught up with like all of the everything that had been happening, because there is so much that was happening. I had completely,
there's a book worth of detail,
Yeah, so much detail. There's so much going on. And I had completely overlooked the fact that the reason that she was attempted to have been assassinated, or the reason she was quote unquote killed, was because she was so popular and beloved among the people. And that was seen as a threat by Duke Orso. So I came to the realization that Orso would need a scapegoat very suddenly here. Like, it hadn't crossed my mind because of all of the other things happening. But of course, they would need to act like a great tragedy had befallen the region. Like, I don't know why this didn't cross my mind right away, but for some reason, like, this really put a bunch of puzzle pieces together for me, this reunion.
I think it does, because we get so many details all at once, right? Like, this is, in many ways, this is the most Game of Thronesian intro. And I know you haven't read it, so excuse me. But like, we're thrown into the deep end in this culture. We do know a lot about the world already, so that's comforting to some degree. But this is a new world in a lot of regards, because it is so detached from the other world that we've been in and been a part of. So yeah, it makes sense to me that, like, with all those loose details around, it's like, what League of Eight, like, what even's important with the League of Eight? If you were reading it conventionally and not like in a repeated fashion, I also think that you wouldn't pick up on some of these things, because it's a deluge of information amidst action.
So much information.
And yeah, but it's all tucked into real character moments too. So, rereads in this book in particular, in my opinion, pay off as hard as rereads in the whole trilogy do, because there's so much clever layering done here.
Makes sense.
Again, my favorite Abercrombie book by a lot, and also, well, a lot of Abercrombie books are really good, so don't get me wrong. This is just a 10, the other ones are 9s, 9.5s for the most part, an 8, there's one 8, but yeah, fuck. Man's unstoppable. It's so good. So he does pin it, though, on Duke Rogant in League of Eight, which is interesting. Pins it on an enemy, right? And he, like, puts that onus for her death on someone to sort of militarize the populace against them, which shows his political savvy, I think, of which we can also get through the overseas marriage. All of this lending this lens of legitimacy to a line that is not very legitimate. Mercenaries turned dukes and counts, made legitimate through marriage and through conquering.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
That makes you question what is legitimacy when it comes to...
Oh, it's perception. Legitimacy is just perception.
Right.
But yeah. In a lot of ways. But yeah. It's clever political maneuvering, though, on Orso's part.
Totally.
Like, I have to give him credit as a character. Even if it's in the background of all of this, he is a genuine... There's a portrait. We didn't really talk about it because we just kind of summarized the art, but there's a portrait of which I think is meant to be evocative of Napoleon on the horse at is it the Battle of Waterloo? Is that what that's depicting? I don't think it's Waterloo. It's some other battle, because Waterloo's is lost, but depicting Napoleon on a horse. And I feel like that's what is also being depicted of Orso in a lot of ways. But it's like, he was 50 miles away. They had no idea. Like, he wasn't anywhere near the battle, and yet they're depicting him on the front line. And I think that does a disservice to how good of a maneuverer Orso is, without Monzo realizing it.
Makes sense.
So from there, Monza then makes her ask of Sejam. She needs a cold head and a good arm on a man that she can borrow. And that man is extended as the one that has been accompanying him this whole time, the thick-necked man, Friendly, of whom is shorter than Shivers, or like a little bit shorter than Shivers, which is an interesting thing because as I picture him, you mentioned earlier that you kind of imagined him as a Frost type. I definitely see him as a Frost type, but he's not as big. The
biggest reason why I think of him similarly to Frost is because of Pacey's delivery of him. Because
that's fair.
I talk about it later in the notes. I know, but he gives him like almost a numb tongue sort of vocal delivery. Yeah,
he makes him seem simple, but he's not, which is so good with his perspective. Just, like there's this dichotomy.
It's a deep, like
thick
tongue, numb voice.
I get it. Yeah,
that he gives him, which is very similar to the voice that he gives Frost. Not as affected,
pronounced,
but a little bit.
Yeah. Oh man, what a character. But he agrees, and Sejam says he's the best man he knows in a lot of ways. It explains kind of the past with him, saying that when Sejam spent time in safety, which we find out is a prison, he was also in safety, which is so funny to reference as an idea. And like that whole, there's like two or three paragraphs where him and Monza are exchanging phrases and sentences that it almost feels like a who's on second, because it's like, I was in safety, especially if you're listening to it. You're like, but what's safety? And like, then it rolls on. I don't know. I find that clever.
Safety was a good, we don't know that safety is prison until we're in Friendly's perspective, I think.
Yeah, we kind of get it. Yeah, it's inferred. My time in prison, in safety, like, or while I was in safety later, like he says that he spent time in prison, met him in prison, and then he says later, he's like, while I was in safety. So it's inferred, but it's solidified in Friendly's perspective. Yeah. Because he talks more about the condition. Well, he doesn't talk. He says it in his head.
And he talks about the sentencing when he was 13 or whatever. 7 when he first committed the crime, but
6 and 1.
Yeah,
we'll get there in just a moment. I can't wait to talk about Friendly.
Sorry, I fucking love Friendly.
Diabolically good character.
You mentioned that there was a character that you thought I would latch onto.
Yes,
it's Friendly.
This is the character.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, this is the character. Yeah,
good.
Friendly. There is another character that I think that you will I think you will love all of these characters for completely different reasons. The one that I was talking about that I thought that you would love was Friendly.
Okay. Yeah.
Like that, right. I was confident that you would enjoy because I was like, this is genius from a writing perspective. And it's so fun from like a philosophical math. We'll get into it in just a second. Let's wrap up this chapter. So agrees, gives him over to her. They're going to help her kill a man and, going to be helping going forward with the rest of the tasks potentially. And at the same time, Shivers also agrees and says, shit on it. Then give me the 50 for killing the man.
Hell yeah.
This is when he kind of comes around. Hell yeah. Hell yeah, buddy. Yeah. So good. So good. All right. We've already started talking about it. 6 and 1 to start off with a quote here, because I haven't read too many of them, despite again, this being such a good, strong intro. The dice came up 6 and 1. The highest dice can roll and the lowest. A fitting judgment on Friendly's life. The pit of horror to the heights of triumph and back.
These dice and these numbers and how they're like used and fixated upon create such a cool internal character dynamic. And I'm assuming this will continue. Like, I have a feeling, I have a suspicion that all of Friendly's perspective chapters are going to be titled like dice roll numbers.
Sure.
We'll see. I don't know. And maybe they'll line up with the number of alive versus the number of dead. I don't know. But however they do it and whatever it is, I'm so excited to experience more of Friendly and his dice rolls and his numbers and his total chaotic.
He's got a fixation. It's a fixation, and it's so well done.
It's a fixation, but there's a little bit of, I don't want to go as far as saying like schizophrenia to it, but there is a like giving himself up to the numbers having more meaning than what they really do.
Yeah, it's a level of focus that I wouldn't generally associate with like schizophrenia, but it's an ascription to more, and it's a fixation. And if we're attempting to rationalize, right? When I think about Friendly, when I set out to write a character, I often think like, what's this person like? Like, what are their traits? What builds them? What makes them a person? And often you go with the simple things. You go with like, yes, Kaladin is depressed. Yes, Darrow is the warrior hero of an undersung generation. Yes, Vin is a street urchin and is sad. And you get like all of these sort of like general ideas, right? And so like you're able to morph something out of those general ideas. You get into specifics and you understand the depths of their depression and other things like that. Fucking Joe Abercrombie goes, what if a dude was fixated on dice? What type of dude would that dude be?
But
and
also
like,
understands,
writes a whole fucking character.
He also understands that the dice aren't actually telling him anything, and like is
right, yeah,
like upfront about that.
Yeah, he is looking for more, like a soothsayer in many ways in the dice. Try like ascribing value to something that isn't there, but also not actually ascribing value. He's more of a realist than he appears, despite his belief in the dice and everything. Like it's so cool. The quote here, I love this. Love this POV. So genius. This is not my favorite book just because of this POV, but Jesus Christ, this is one of the best POVs ever written. What was coming? Always full of possibilities. What was past? Done, hardened, like dough turned to bread. Just like a little math guy working out philosophical determinism in real time and being like just so into it, and then outwardly being like, yeah, whatever. They're numbers. Why do I have the dice? Because they got to be rolled, dude. Like, just what else so straight up the shivers. Yeah, I'm gonna roll them.
They don't say anything. They're dice.
Fuck.
Oh man, does Joe have a philosophy background? To your point about determinism,
I would say that Joe has had many a civ victory that was a peaceful one. But I don't think he has a philosophy.
I only ask
he's
because
well read.
Like we've been. We talk a lot about philosophy through Red Rising, and like we kind of become known for it within the Red Rising community. Yeah. And that just hasn't been a present sort of aspect of our breakdown of this series. Right. But to see it start to...
Or Mistborn.
I guess so, yeah, a little bit.
Or like it wasn't in Mistborn either, but yeah.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, yeah. And
that's
anyway. To see it start to turn its head a little bit, and for us to potentially be able to break down determinism and like other sort of schools of thought in philosophy feels really
ethics,
good.
Morals,
and I'm excited to see if that will continue. But I don't know what his background is.
I think so. One thing that I think is important to give Joe credit on here is I was being reductive with the religious victory earlier that I think that he would do, but I do think that Joe, after going through this trilogy of books that was meant to be sort of an evaluation, like we talked about with Mike, of the Lord of the Rings, he dives into these standalones to really kind of explore in a lot of ways like what he wants to write about and take tropes and have fun in a different way than it is sort of inverting and playing around with ideas that were kind of formed beforehand, right? So he got to explore those philosophies in depth, and he got to kind of tackle it. The standalones, man, get into whatever the hell they want. And I think as a part of that, we do see more of an esoteric view that's still really grounded. I think to the point of what you're asking, I think we're going to get into more esoterica as we continue here, as we progress through time, even as we evaluate the next 6 books. I would say that Joe is definitely a scholar of European history, and a lot of that ties into a lot of the different elements going forward. He definitely, with the sequel trilogy, and even one might say the original trilogy, is talking about a certain moment in European history that's really important. We'll get to it and we'll talk about it more when we get there. I think that this is evocative of something. The Heroes is meant to comment on something, and Red Country definitely has a commentary. So like, I think more and more as we get deeper into the works here in the First Law, they become more esoteric while also in expositing more on Joe, while also still being incredible character pieces, incredible stories without missing a beat, which is why it is impossible to reflect, in my opinion, on Red Rising without talking in some regard about the First Law. So realistically, part of the reason we're here to begin with, because we have to be realistic about these things, is because when we get to Red God, we're going to do a little bit of a backwards lens and point out the First Law things, because it is so evident if you've read both of the series.
Gotcha.
That was a long aside about the philosophy angle, but that's ultimately where it comes from, what it stems from.
Perfect. Speaking of making connections between the Red Rising series and the First Law series, hello to any of the people that I met at the Minnesota Laureltide that I recommended read the First Law.
Yay.
And hopefully you've gotten into it and have followed our coverage of it whenever that happened.
You should. It's so good.
There were a bunch of people that I turned them on to this. Like,
hell yeah.
That was mostly what I was talking about the whole time.
Nice. It's hard not to. It's so good. And better yet, PJ, I don't know that you've checked. I don't know how frequently you even go on Instagram or any social media ever.
I go on once in a while when I get
weird notifications from our account.
When I accidentally click on notifications is when I go on it.
Fair enough. Lit Escalates, which is the former brand Shit Escalates, which is also the Pierce Brown Associated Red Rising brand.
Fucking cowards not keeping it.
No one else wanted to no other author was looking to pick up Shit Escalates as their brand, which, okay, fine.
Joe would have.
Well, here's the thing. Joe did pick up Lit Escalates.
But he would have. That's super cool. I don't know any of the details of what
that's what I was just telling you. I'm just telling it to you now. He did pick up, and that was the Monday announcement with Joel Daniel Phillips doing a bunch of art for the Devils that will be internal to those books. So very exciting. Cool. Yeah, very cool. Very excited. And in addition, it seems like a further partnership is being established. So I believe it seems like we'll get some genuine merch.
Dope.
Out of this deal. So I'm very excited.
Me too.
Yeah.
But I think you would have joined a Shit Escalates thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think he just needed proof. Truthfully, I mean, yeah, Shit Escalates is right up his alley. So it makes sense. Okay. So we're in Friendly's perspective. The dice are so sick. We talk about determinism. We have all of these fun things as he reflects actively in like a very short chapter on so many ideas and ideals and fixating on the number and what it could mean and what it should mean. And like we said, it doesn't really matter. He's passing time, and the group that they're waiting for walks up, and Friendly, just from this moment of esoterica that he's having on his own, cleaves one of the guys' head open with a butcher's cleaver. And they abduct their target. We mentioned this earlier, but there's also a woman of the night, a whore with her, or with him, and there's two guards kind of accompanying on the sides. And we abduct Gaba, one of the seven, or 1 in 6.
Also, he mentioned, so part of the reason why I don't take what he's talking about at face value is because he also talks about like twisted carnival masks that all of these characters are wearing.
Mm-hmm.
Or not necessarily explicitly that they're wearing it, but that they are what are presented to him are twisted carnival masks. So like his perception of reality is not necessarily, presumably they're not actually wearing carnival masks, right?
Right. Yeah.
Like,
I don't think so.
Yeah. So his perception
he describes
of reality
her as a painted woman
is twisted.
Yeah.
At least a little
twisted
bit.
Through, I want to say the lens of a 7-year-old, right? Like that was the last time that he was in polite society.
Well,
in giant air quotes.
I think that was the first time that he stole, right? When he was 7.
Mm-hmm.
But the first time he was caught was 5 years, half a decade later. So I think he was 13 the first time that he was incarcerated.
So in prison from a young age,
right?
Not brought up, like street urchin, regardless. So like education kind of lacking, given the details that we have on him. In addition, he's in the prison. Yeah, I mean, this is a line from the last chapter, but when they're talking about Friendly's name, I suspect the name was meant in some irony in a prison. All kinds of people end up in prison. Some of us even have a sense of humor. That's good.
The first time. It's from early on in that chapter, or like halfway through the chapter, safety is mentioned, and that's the first time prison is mentioned, I think.
Yeah.
Sorry, just
right. But to that point, I think that it's like the whole point is, for the most part, is that he was raised really in a prison in a lot of ways, and as such, like, has an incomplete view of the world. To call a character like Friendly simple is incorrect. He is instead just undereducated in a lot of ways. Like there's no,
but it's undereducated in certain aspects. He's underdeveloped, but I don't think undereducated. He is intelligent.
Intelligence and education are different things.
No, I agree.
I'm also trying to draw that distinction in the same way.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say that he's not intelligent, but he is not educated.
I would go with developed. He's underdeveloped.
Sure. Underdeveloped. Yeah, that works. Yeah. But he's very intellectual about the things that he needs to be, or wants to be, or chooses to be. But like, he only knows certain things. And, by comparison, if we just extrapolate a little bit on the character that we have here in front of us, dice were probably in the jail, and like dice games were real, and they were probably always being rolled. They were probably always fashioned. And so as such, a fixation on numbers, that tracks. And like, if you only have certain things to fixate on in a prison, what do you do?
Right.
You do that.
Makes sense.
That's why books in prisons are important, people. Watch Shawshank Redemption. And chessboards. Yes, quite. So we abduct Gaba anyway, and that whole thing happens. There's a small note here that I really appreciate, and it goes kind of to the point of our point about education versus intelligence. Friendly hears Shivers mutter "by the dead" in Northern, and he recognizes it as Northern, which is it's such a note. He speaks multiple languages.
Yeah. I was going to bring that up if you didn't. I'm thinking maybe he learned it in prison.
Probably the case.
Seems likely, at least.
Yeah. It just goes to like undo. When we're introduced to Friendly immediately, he's this big block of a man, right? And it's like, oh God, here's Frost 2.0 in a lot of ways. Yeah. But then we get into his perspective, we see everything, and it's like, oh my God, I'm such a fucking dolt. Like, absolute, made a fool of me in a lot of ways.
So we've talked at length in the past about the difference between Glokta's internal monologue voice and his like actual speaking voice, as presented by this is all as presented by Stephen Pacey.
Right.
This is the biggest, starkest difference between internal monologue and or not even necessarily internal. Yeah. There's not a lot of internal monologue, quote unquote, like there is with Glokta, but the voice of the perspective, which I was getting at that a little bit in our conversation with Mike, where like every character has
it's so well defined
their own voice. And I think that got conflated a little bit with internal monologue, which is different. Like just the narration of what's going on from the perspective of the character, even though it's third person,
right,
is very starkly different from character to character. And this character has such a different voice when speaking compared to how Pacey describes what's going on from their perspective. It's a booming, deep, muddled voice. Like I said, kind of like Frost, kind of like maybe there's some speech impediments.
Yeah,
there, but not well enough described to know what's going on there. But it caught me so off guard because I was walking around Minneapolis when I was listening to this for the first time. This chapter, I did an audiobook and completely, totally, 100% caught me off guard.
It's super funny that you mentioned walking around the first time that you're listening to this, because I was walking around. I was like on a long walk when I started this book to the same degree. It was late at night and I'd been walking for like 2 hours and I was just in love. I'd finished The Hero of Ages and I jumped into this because this is a recent read for me, PJ. This is 2022, I want to say.
Oh, well.
This is not that long ago. Yeah. Fuck, man.
Like since we started the show.
We started the show and I started reading the standalones. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yep. Yeah. So I knew that we were coming here. I didn't know when we started the show, but I knew that we were coming here eventually to this moment. I made you read an entire trilogy to get here, which is another thing to just consider in my own right. My own masochism. Not really masochism. It was a fun time for everyone. So obviously the stabbing happens. Everything like that occurs. We get into this wonderful perspective that I'm so excited to inhabit more. And then we're going to get to talk about more over the coming weeks. But a final point is Shivers is kind of like just disgusted with the whole habit and whatever is going on around him. And fucking Friendly comes out and says, "Welcome to Styria, my guy."
Very warm, welcoming party for Shivers here.
Yeah. Yeah. As a response to his "by the dead." So it's good. All right. With that, we get into our final chapter of the week here. Bloody Instructions. Again, we've already mentioned the fact that one of the highlights of this book so far are all of the like great, in some ways, in some cases, reappropriated quotes, but in others, unique aphorisms or pithy observations that you could ascribe to someone else. But this feels, and I'm curious on to where you ascribe some of these different writers, if you can point any out that you would equate them to. But Verturio here is quoted and says, "Never trust a man beyond his own interest." Before we get into the rest of Monza, do you have anyone that you would ascribe that to?
It feels I feel like there's a similar quote that I know and has been that I've learned about, and I can't remember what it is.
Totally good. For me, it feels very Machiavellian. This feels very like understand people at their baser nature and go with it, which Marcus Aurelius does sometimes too. But to me, we're also in our quasi-Italy, and so feels like it's Machiavelli to me. Although I guess, to be fair to Marcus Aurelius, Rome is also Italy, in a lot of other places, but he is Italian.
Right. There a whole lot of Italians in philosophy.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Yeah. So Monza is kind of reflecting on who she can trust as she aims to torture and kill Gaba, with paranoia kind of fraying at the edge of her damaged mind in a lot of ways. She's got this sort of like sense about her. And I say this in a way where it's like, I don't know how to pin it. How do you react?
So I feel like it's not entirely unreal. I'm assuming you're talking about her kind of going off on this tangent of like not necessarily trusting Shivers and Friendly and thinking maybe they'll come in buddy and smiling and like joking with Gaba. Right? Like that's kind of where her paranoia is really shining in my mind.
It's because of Gaba and sort of the conspiracy, but then also she's applying it to both Shivers and Friendly at the moment. Like, are they going to go along with what the fuck I'm doing? Like,
but it also seemed like she was ready for the prospect of them having been secretly agents of Orso the entire time, even though she's the
also
one that vetted Shivers and accepted the vetting of her close friend who is in opposition to Orso. Like,
I mean, even if you evaluate Orso on the face, right? She compares Orso and Shivers directly, saying that Orso was always an honest guy.
Yeah.
And Shivers appears to be an honest guy, but
it's totally
Orso
fair.
Fucked up.
Yeah.
So
I can't blame her. Trust is something that is clearly going to be difficult
fractured
for her. Yeah, it's something that for her leads to danger so far. So it's gonna take some time to maybe. I suspect that trust is one of the major points of character growth that I'm going to be looking out for Mansa.
Yeah. To that point, there's a line here that's great. Again, pithy in a lot of ways, but she couldn't trust anyone, but she couldn't do it alone. Yeah, pretty straightforward. That's the reality.
Very straightforward. Very true.
So from there, they wake Gaba, and we see torture like we've never seen before in this series. Truly, I had forgotten because again, reflecting on the trilogy and the way that I had read it, when I read this for the first time in 2022, as mentioned, maybe it was late 2021, somewhere in that space. It's well documented on our Discord server, for the record. It's in a thread. So you can see my original thoughts when you want to make it to that point. It's all there. But so through the original trilogy, we see moments of torture, we see these other things. And when I was rereading it with you, I was like, most of them aren't that bad. Like, they're not crazy. They're mostly fingertips. It's fingers, which is awful to imagine, but it's not brutalization in this way, in which I don't think anyone was tortured. They were all tortured for information. This isn't torture. This is extermination.
This is, I disagree. This is torture, but this is not torture for an end.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah.
That's the biggest difference between this and all of our other torture scenes. And you're right in that it goes a little bit further than all of what's depicted by the torture scenes that we've seen so far from Glokta's perspective. But I don't think it really gives anything new. Like, we get the hammer blows from.
Okay, I'm gonna disagree with you there a little bit, but I do want to flesh out the rest of the scene just a little bit before we get into that, right? So, like,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. All I meant was the most unique thing about this is the motivation for it and the reasoning behind it. Whereas
there was an expertise to Glokta, of which is different.
There was an expertise, but there was also, like, the only
finesse
bit of torture that he conducts where it's not information gathering is salt, and that's off page.
Yeah. Right.
So
because all that he's doing is for that. Yeah.
So there's precision and expertise and a really well-established sort of disassociation between, like, his actual affected mind and what he's doing to people.
Right. That's fair.
But I think the biggest thing is the fact that his torturing is not for vengeance, and it's not for, like, it has it has an end that he's trying to achieve. Like, he's trying to gather information in every single aspect that we see him torture somebody on page.
Yeah, there's always a means to whatever end he is looking to achieve. So I do definitely understand exactly where you're coming from. There's a finesse and an expertise to what he's doing. He's always seeking, something. The closest comparison that I have from the trilogy, I would say, to what we experience here is not Glokta, but is Logan. And it is Logan with Bethod. And that's sort of the same level of brutality from a description perspective and what is done in a sort of hacking fashion. That's in fair. A lot of ways, if that makes sense. So, like, to call what Glokta did is torture. Let's not call it that. But this is brutality. This is mangling.
Yeah, this is brutality in the form of torture.
Yeah, right.
Because I think to be torture,
to be tortured is to be imprisoned and put through
torture. But it feels like to fall into the category of torture, it has to be for an end, for information gathering. I guess you can be tortured
I think imprisonment is the base of torture, but I do understand. Yeah. Imprisonment would be my bottom line, but I agree with you. But I think that anytime that you get into sort of the depths of the conversation like we are, it's like you're drawing the line between senseless torture and directioned torture.
Right.
It's
you're right.
Either way, it's still torture. But I mean, I agree with you. It's just, I don't know.
But it does make me think, like, all of this said, it makes me really wonder knowing how Monza feels throughout all of this and how hollow it feels, it makes me wonder what Glocta's head feels like with salt.
I don't think that, for the record, I don't think Glocta tortured Salt himself. I think he entirely passed that off on Salem Ruse.
No, he asked Ruse to open the box for him. Ruse was his lackey there, like Severard was.
Sure. But like, I felt like it was completely
implied that.
I guess you're right. I feel like the extraction of pain, commanding it is probably the same. It's the same. It'd be the same stain on your soul if you want to look at it that way. Like either way, you did the thing. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, getting back, great discussion. I really really an appreciable difference between the types of torture, which I think is important to distinguish here because we are dealing with different.
It is the same term. It's the same name, and all of them are accurate. But I make a distinction in my mind of like what is torture versus what is just masochism.
Confession. Yeah. A confessional in some ways on the other side of things. But so Gaba, as he wakes up, comes to the realization that this is Monza in front of him, a ghost of who should have been long dead. And he realizes how fucked he is, in Monscaro's own words. The man begs for a deal, and she pulls out a hammer, explaining that it doesn't do them square for the mountain that she was thrown from, which is there is a bitter vengeance in this that is so palpable throughout almost the whole scene. Not entirely. There's a moment, but this is like movie perfection. Like, again, adaptation, this happens. This makes total sense on screen. It's great.
Yes and no.
Really?
How do you depict the hollow? I guess you can do it with a little, like with some intentional close-up facial shots. Yeah,
it's the nervousness. I think Rebecca Ferguson in particular is very good at sort of that, like,
she would be
nervous,
a good job.
skitterish.
She'd do
expression.
A good job with it. You're right.
Yeah,
I feel like it would be more difficult to really drive home the fact that this bit of torture is not as satisfying as she expected it to be, but she still wants to fake it.
I didn't want to draw this comparison too early, but you've hit on too many notes, so I must. You've seen Kill Bill?
Yeah. Okay.
What quote does Kill Bill open with? Revenge is a dish best served cold. Yeah, it's revenge is a dish best served cold.
Okay.
And the whole thing is a revenge story about, coming up and killing all these different people that wronged her after she survives a near-death incident, right? Like, This is, truth be told, the comparison is drawn often to The Count of Monte Cristo, as it should be, because it is very similar. It also should be and needs to be drawn between this and Kill Bill, because it is also similar. Both counts, yeah. Count of Monte Cristo. Yeah. But Kill Bill is definitely a comparison here. And this is a great example of it, right? Where the bride in Kill Bill also has trouble, like, is going through the motions because she knows what needs to be done in order to get there. But, like, in the end, doesn't feel great. And, like, has sort of those same skitterish feelings as she kills a woman with a child of whom she resigns not to kill. And this is in the very first minutes of the movie. She resigns not to kill the woman, but then the woman has a gun in a cereal box and tries to kill her, and so then she executes her.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
God, I need to watch this movie again.
So fucking good. I rewatched it in preparation for reading this book, for the record. I rewatched both of them because I knew I was going to reference it a couple of times, so I had to freshen up.
I should watch it. I'll watch it again.
It's a good movie. Regardless, both parts, good movie.
Maybe I'll watch it tonight.
I'm not going to tell you about it, but there's a whole part of that movie that I fucking forgot entirely, and it blew me away, and I was caught completely off guard by it. So I'm not going to mention it because it blew my mind.
Sounds good.
When you hit it, you'll know, and you'll text me about it. So
fair enough.
Anyway, so back to Gaba. What'd you make of her moment here of like beginning with comeuppance?
She is so set she's so set on being this, like, for this to be the flavor of vengeance that she is exacting. And there's a theatricality to it that I understand she can't abandon halfway through.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But I'm really, I feel like this is the last sort of pseudo torture that we see from Monza. I believe.
By that, do you mean you think she gets worse, or do you?
No, I think she just goes for killing.
Okay.
Like, I don't think she gives up on the vengeance thing.
Sure.
But I think she has understood and has felt the hollowness that this flavor of vengeance has left within her, and she is going to attribute it to to the torture and not to the actual vengeance seeking, at least right away. So she'll be like, okay, I can't go through this torturous shit anymore, but I'll still feel good if I kill all of them.
Mm-hmm. So you're guessing, you're making a bet?
I am making a bet.
Okay.
I'm betting that this is of the 6 remaining
6 and 1
targets. Yep. She will not go through the trouble of torturing them because she'll feel like that is, at least right now, she'll feel like that is the part that is making her feel so hollow.
Cool. All right. Sweet. To this regard, I do want to just kind of rewind a little bit from the killing and revenge thing, just to talk about what actually happened to some degree inside of the scene. There's this great quote that she has where he's kind of screaming and begging for his life. Like I mentioned earlier, he mentioned he has a wife and kids way earlier. By that, I mean, like, in the first part of this episode, 2 hours ago, where he's begging for his wife and kids, but like, he doesn't give a shit. Obviously, he was out on the streets with women of the night. I don't know why that's my turn of phrase. Courtesans. There's so many other ways to say this, but women of the night, because we're in October. Women of the night.
You don't have to say it
very
like Dracula.
No, but I want to. I want to say it like Dracula. Anyway, he says he'll kill you, and she says he already did. Remember? It didn't stick, and that's such a good fucking
fucking perfect. Oh. It's such a perfect response to that retort. It's so good.
Yeah. So in response, of course, she has the hammer. She beats him to a pulp. His fingers are broken, torn up, and Monza isn't having a great time while doing it. The pain being unsatisfactory, like you had mentioned, continues the torture monologue, of which is in many ways rote, which I think is why Joe is kind of having fun with this trope here. Like, we know what a torture monologue kind of looks like. And so she slips in the middle of it and trips and hits him more in her rage coming up after that moment, mostly because she's embarrassed, which is super strange and a different feeling. But also, I don't know if embarrassment and rage actually kind of go hand in hand in a lot of ways. Like, it's a defensive reaction. So I get Monza's breaking of him.
I feel like this happens in the first trilogy too. Glocta. Not with Glocta.
No.
Who is it with? Maybe it's a different book entirely. Or different series. But like this feels... I feel like I remember something like this happening.
Sure. Yeah. I don't think it's in the original trilogy. There's some like... I mean... Furious has a couple of like rage moments. Like West has a couple of rage moments that are sort of like that in some way, but like not in this same regard, right?
Right.
Like not even when he pushes Ladislaw off the mountain is it the same kind of way.
Is it Shay? Be thinking of Green
Yeah. Bone. Okay. Shay does have a moment. Oh wait, no, not Shay. Andon has a moment, or Shay. They might both have moments of sort of like embarrassment reactions. I think it's Andon though. Yeah, it is Andon.
I think
it's with the boys on the street. It's Yeah. Anyway, but
that's what I'm thinking.
Like embarrassment and rage go hand in hand.
They do.
Yeah.
They feed off of each other.
Mm-hmm. In a lot of ways. So he starts screaming. Friendly quiets him with a wire, which of course is reminiscent of also what he was doing to Monza. She eventually, in sort of this fit of rage, cracks his head, and he dies as a moment as she's kind of going through different beats of what happened to her and them. And he's down 6-1. And from the quiet shadows, Shivers asks the question, what's it like? Revenge? Does it feel good?
Damn, man. Ain't that the whole fucking question? In this section also, she says 6-1 out loud, and Friendly, like,
too friendly. Yeah.
Well, I think just to the air, and Friendly is there. And Friendly, like, really perks up at it. That was so good. I love that. I love that tie-in.
Yeah, I think, yes, you're right. She does say 6-1, but he is muttering that number beforehand. But yeah, and he does kind of look at her, shocked that she, like, repeated it. But he's saying numbers, and she's making fun of him for it earlier in the chapter. Yeah,
right. That's true.
Which is where I was getting it conflated in my own head that I didn't say out loud. So you don't even understand why I'm bringing this up. Point is, I was debating you, and then I went, wait, no, I think he's right. But she does talk about it, right? And so I went through that whole thing silently in my own brain.
Yeah.
And now here we are. But yes, yeah. So she does say 6-1. Friendly is blown away by it in the moment, kind of like putting the numbers together and just being like, you are reflecting on the thing. Like, we're on some kind of level that's so weird. Yeah. Yeah. Friendly has the vibe of a dude who likes mushrooms in a lot of ways. Like, from his perspective, like, I don't know. He seems like a psilocybin guy. You know what I mean? Like, he just seems like he's doing it. And he's like, yeah, man, those numbers mean something. And then, like, someone seriously in his life is like, hey, do those mean anything? He's like, no, dude, don't worry about it.
Oh, that's so good. It's true.
Yeah. Okay, so to round this chapter out, with this death done and the work well paid for on Shivers' part, she extends an offer to Shivers, Friendly, of course, having already agreed to go along with the quest. But the Northman, she offers 5,000 scales to see this all through, killing and everyone. He says no at first, but she recounts her tale of why she's doing this to begin with, because she hadn't really given the full story outside of a dead brother and who needs to be killed in the name of vengeance. And in the end, he agrees as Shivers and Friendly take care of Gaba's corpse. I'm so curious on your reflection as this reflects against Shivers' own brother's death and sort of his vengeance by proxy in some ways. What were sort of your thoughts?
It's interesting to me how impressionable and persuadable, if that's a word, Shivers is.
I would say agreeable. Shivers is agreeable.
He is agreeable.
He always has been.
He also recognizes that this is like the single hot button issue that could get him to agree to something like this.
Yeah.
The vengeance for a murdered brother.
Or is it the easy answer? Is he not turning away? You know, the other side of that is like
this is also a point that's
it's a thing that Logan wrestles with entirely.
Well, yes, but it's also earlier, not here, but earlier on when he first agrees to this because of understanding that this is to
a brother.
Yep. Yeah, because of a killed brother. He reflects on his agreement to it in a passive way. Like, again, similar to the fight, it's like he passively agrees to this and retroactively attributes his feelings towards his brother to the acceptance of the task.
To the acceptance of torture and murdering a man.
Right.
And or many men.
I think I'm still on the side of it's active, but he's doing his best to like remove himself from it, as opposed to how I feel about Logan. But anyway, regardless, this is still the hot button issue. And like, I would be curious if it was something different, if he would still find an excuse for it. And he probably would. Fucking Northmen, murderous bastards.
Murderous bastards all.
The lot of them. Anyway, whatever it is, we've got this merry band of 3 perspectives that are all together, and I'm excited for it, and I'm excited to see where they go. But it really does feel different, this book, because they're not starting disparate, and they're not coming together later on in the story, as opposed to like just immediately coming together. And like, I have a suspicion that we'll end up with more perspectives than this, but for now, that's where we're at.
Cool. All right, man. I'm so excited. You know, we talked about this for an awfully long time. We had a lot of like world building and setup to do. Actually, frankly, this episode isn't as long as I thought it was going to go.
No.
I thought we were going to approach 4 hours.
The first half,
given the way the first half
the
went.
first 2/3.
But it was so long, and it was so much to cover. Again, I almost put Bone Thief on the... not Bone Thief. Yeah, Bone Thief on the other side, because I was like, the first part might be really long, but like, what do I do with these 2 pieces? I don't know.
I think this worked out. I think that would have been...
Yeah, I think it's great.
I think this was good. Yeah. The way you set it up.
I'm so excited for the prospect of everything that we have to come. So I hope you are too.
I am.
Cool.
Of course.
With that in mind, we have next week, part 2, Westport.
The entirety of part 2.
All of part 2. So, and again, just to clarify what I said at the very beginning of the show, in case you've forgotten, or you're listening to this over multiple days, which I do think is probably a smart move. Westport, all of it. All of it. Read it all. Whole thing, front to back.
Consume Westport.
Cool, rad, dope.
Cool, rad, dope.
Cool, rad, dope. Sweet. With that in mind, PJ, do you know what we have?
We have a phone number.
We do have a phone number.
We have a phone number, and that phone number is 910-408-2534. And if you type that into your phone, you can both text and call us. And leave us whatever you want.
Ludicrous messages.
You could say whatever you want to us, really. If it's something that's relevant and or not incoherent, we'll say it here on the show. We personally prefer incoherent messages, in case you can't tell, as we ramble through a variety of different conversations around the idea of torture for a length of 10 minutes on the episode. But yeah, no, actually and genuinely, please send us messages, voicemails, whatever. Would love to feature you on the show in some fashion. So appreciation to everyone who has sent us text messages thanking us for all that we do. If you want to thank us bigger, better than that, you can leave us a review on either Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening. You can tell your friends, which is also a very big deal. If you know anyone else that is reading these books, share widely. You know, it goes without saying, one of our biggest fears with this show was starting in one book and then moving to the next and seeing what happened. We've been very fortunate, of course, to retain so many of you between series and otherwise, but also we want more people to read more things and enjoy more things. So, if you know people that like these things, you know, come along. We've got a lot of our own patrons reading the series for the first time, or the standalones for the first time, and then the sequel series for the first time. But I'm so excited for that. I'm so happy that there are people on my side now.
Yeah, more. They're numerous.
There are people that weren't initially on my side that are now on my side.
You know, it's fun. At the very beginning of the show, and we always try to keep these ends a little bit different, but at the very beginning of the show, we talked about Beer is the Mind Killer, and I know that you haven't chatted with the gentleman behind A Beer is the Mind Killer, but I have a little bit, and he is a great artist. He's done a number of things. He's tagged us and stuff. He's smart. He's cool. He's awesome. He is reading through a lot of the books that he's reading through for the first time, and then listening to us at the same time, and then making art,
which is
super cool. Not all of it, but some of it, and that's really cool. I believe that him going through the first law with us in the podcast, of which led to the art and everything else, it's the first time. So
that's dope.
It's neat stuff. Yeah. Very cool. Very fun. Cool. All right. So with that, we'll see you next week. Very excited. Read Westport, and we're going to continue on in Best Served Cold.
See you next week.
Bye.